The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. Subspace follows predictable patterns. Warp fields generate measurable distortions. Even the Bajoran Wormhole, for all its mystery, produces consistent Verteron particle signatures. But what happens when something emerges that defies every sensor, every theory, every rational explanation? What happens when the instruments designed to categorize reality simply return error? Deep Space Nine's operations center erupted in controlled chaos as alarms cascaded across every console. Major Kira Neri's gripped her station, eyes locked on readings that shouldn't exist. Report. Captain Benjamin Sisko's voice cut through the noise. The wormhole just opened, Kira said, fingers dancing across her panel. But the Verteron readings are completely wrong. There's something else mixed in, an energy signature I've never seen before. Chief O'Brien leaned over his engineering console. Forehead creased. Captain, sensors are picking up a vessel. Small. Maybe 60 meters. Configuration unknown. It's not matching anything in our database. Not Federation, Dominion, Borg. Nothing. On the main view screen, the Bajoran wormhole bloomed into existence, its shimmering flower of exotic matter more violent than usual. Through its center came something that made every officer on the bridge pause. The vessel moved with unnatural grace, organic curves wrapped around geometric precision, silver and gold surfaces that seemed to shift in the light. Energy crackled along its hull. Purple and black tendrils that made the space around it ripple like disturbed water. Hail them, Sisko ordered. Silence. The vessel drifted, momentum carrying it away from the wormhole as the phenomenon collapsed behind it. No response to communications. No scanning beams. No defensive posturing. Just eerie stillness. Life signs? Sisko asked. Dax's hands moved across her science station. That's the strange part, Benjamin. I'm reading one humanoid life sign, but the ship itself registers as partially organic. There's also something else. A second presence, but it's not showing up as a traditional life form. More like a consciousness without a body, connected to something aboard that ship. Inside the orbiter, the operator's eyes snapped open in the transference chamber. Pain lanced through their skull. The connection to their warframe felt stretched, distorted. Through their link, they sensed the Excalibur frame standing motionless in the cargo bay, waiting for instruction. Ordis. The operator's voice was young, uncertain. A teenager's voice in a ship designed for war. Cosmic background noise irritating. Ordis is here, operator. The Cephalon's fragmented consciousness flickered through the ship's systems. We seem to have taken a wrong turn. Wonderful detour into uncharted space. Navigation systems are recalibrating. Solar rails are gone. Completely absent from sensor range. We are very lost precisely where we need to be. The operator pulled themselves from the chamber, bare feet touching cold metal. Through the orbiter's windows, they saw a massive structure, a space station of unprecedented size, its 3 docking pylons extending like arms. Ships of unfamiliar design moved in organized patterns. Everything about this place spoke of order, civilization, peace. Nothing like the Origin system's endless conflict. Ordis. What's our weapon status? All arsenal functional. Operator. Railjack armaments responding. Warframes ready for deployment. However, void energy signatures are fluctuating, dancing erratically. Whatever phenomenon brought us here is interfering with transference protocols. You may experience increased latency, horrible delays when piloting frames. On DS9, Dax's console chimed urgently. Benjamin, the vessel is powering weapons. Multiple launch tubes opening across its hull. Red alert. Shields up. But hold fire. Sisko stood, jaw tight. We don't know their intentions yet. Kira's tactical display showed the alien ship's weapon ports. Captain, if that thing attacks, we give them a chance. Major. That's what we do. The operator stood in their arsenal, hand hovering over Excalibur's frame. Through the orbiter's sensors, Ordis fed them information about the station. Massive population. Advanced technology. But nowhere near Orokin-level sophistication. No obvious threat signatures. But dozens of weapon emplacements tracked their ship. They'd materialized in someone's territory. The Lotus had always taught them to assess, adapt, remain unseen until the mission parameters were clear. But the Lotus wasn't here. The familiar guidance. The maternal voice that had directed every mission silent. They were alone in a way they'd never been before. Ordis. Can you establish communications with that station? Attempting fumbling now, operator. Their communication protocols are primitive, elegantly simple. Audio-visual transmission only, no data bursts. No encrypted tactical channels. Just. How quaint, terrifyingly vulnerable. The operator took a breath. They'd never conducted first contact before. That had always been the Lotus's domain, or the various faction leaders across the Origin system. Tenno didn't talk. They acted, but something about this place felt different. The station's weapons were charged but not firing. Ships maintained distance but didn't flee. Whoever commanded this territory possessed restraint. Open a channel. On DS9's view screen, the image shifted. Officers leaned forward, expecting an alien face. A threatening posture. Some indication of intent. Instead, they saw a figure in a dark bodysuit, face obscured by a hood and mask, standing in a chamber of impossible technology. Behind them, visible through an open doorway, stood something that made O'Brien's engineering mind reel: a humanoid form 7 feet tall. Sleek metallic body frozen in perfect stillness. Not a robot. Not exactly. Something alive and not alive simultaneously. This is Captain Benjamin Sisko of Deep Space Nine, a Federation starbase. You've entered Bajoran space through the Celestial Temple. We mean you no harm. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The figure tilted its head. When it spoke, the voice was young. Too young for someone piloting a warship alone. I am Tenno. My ship was pulled through an anomaly during a mission. I don't know this place. I don't know your Federation. I need information about where I am, and how to return to the Origin system. Sisko exchanged glances with Dax. The voice, the body language: this was a kid. A teenager in a warship, emerging from what the Bajorans called the Celestial Temple. We can help you, Sisko said carefully. But first, I need you to power down your weapons. As a gesture of good faith. Through the operator's mask, eyes narrowed. Good faith. The Origin system had taught them that good faith was a luxury maintained by overwhelming firepower. But Lotus had also taught them about balance, knowing when to fight and when to listen. Ordis. Close the launch tubes. Keep Arsenal hot. But not visible. Compliance reluctant achieved. Operator. On DS9, tactical displays showed the alien vessel's weapons port ceiling. Kira exhaled slowly. They're standing down. Good. Sisko said. Now? Tenno, is that your name or your species? Both. Neither. It's complicated. Sisko smiled slightly. Complicated we can work with. I'm extending an invitation. Dock with our station. We'll share what we know about this region of space. And perhaps we can help you find your way home. We've dealt with beings lost far from their point of origin before. The operator's hand rested on Excalibur's chamber. Every instinct screamed caution, but stranded in an unknown galaxy, with void energy unstable and no solar rails to navigate by, they needed intelligence. The Lotus had taught them that too. Sometimes the mission required infiltration, not elimination. I accept your invitation, Captain Sisko. But I'm bringing security. On the view screen, the humanoid figure behind the operator stirred to life. Blue energy crackling along its blade-like arms. Sisko's expression didn't change, but O'Brien muttered under his breath, "Oh, this is going to be interesting." If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. The orbiter adjusted course, gliding toward DS9's docking port with unnatural silence. Inside, the operator initiated transference, consciousness flowing through the void into Excalibur's frame. The connection felt sluggish, stretched across dimensional barriers, but it held. As the Warframe systems came fully online, the operator's consciousness merged with the biomechanical weapon. Through Excalibur's enhanced senses, they perceived the station ahead: thousands of life signs, complex energy patterns, a civilization built on principles the Origin system had abandoned millennia ago. Whatever happened next, the Tenno would face it as they always had. With blade in hand and void energy coursing through their veins. Balance would be maintained. One way or another. The docking clamps engaged with a magnetic hum that echoed through the orbiter's hull. Through Excalibur's optical sensors, the operator watched the airlock cycle open, revealing a corridor of Industrial Federation design. Functional. Efficient. Nothing like the Orokin's obsession with beauty through excess, or the Grineer's brutal pragmatism. This was something in between: technology serving purpose without sacrificing aesthetic entirely. Ordis. Maintain standby protocols. If I don't check in every 30 minutes. Initiate emergency departure. Understood. Worrying intensifies. Operator. Ordis will protect. Hover anxiously over the orbiter in your absence. Do try not to get dissected. Politely examined by the locals. The operator's consciousness rode inside Excalibur's frame as it moved through the airlock. 7 feet of biomechanical precision. Every movement flowing with practiced grace. The Warframe's energy blade hilts hung at its sides, unpowered but ready. To the sensors undoubtedly watching, it would appear as one being. They didn't need to know the truth yet that the operator remained safely aboard the orbiter, projecting their will through transference across 100 meters of station interior. The airlock opened onto DS9's habitat ring. A security detail waited 4 officers in mustard yellow uniforms, hands near their phasers but not drawn. Professional. Disciplined. Behind them stood Chief O'Brien, tricorder in hand, and a striking woman with joined spots running down her neck. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Jadzia Dax," the woman said, offering a welcoming smile that didn't quite mask her scientific curiosity. "This is Chief O'Brien, our operations officer. Captain Sisko is waiting in Ops our command center. If you'll follow us?" Excalibur's head turned, optical sensors cataloging every detail. Escape routes. Defensive positions. Weapon emplacements disguised as structural elements. The Tenno mind worked automatically, processing tactical data even as the operator attempted something they'd rarely done: diplomacy. "Lead the way, Commander." The voice emerged from Excalibur's frame, synthesized but carrying the operator's inflection. Most assumed the Warframe itself was alive. Safer that way. As they walked through DS9's corridors, the operator observed life they'd never encountered in the Origin system. Civilians mingled freely with military personnel. Multiple species interacted without apparent hostility: humans, Bajorans with their distinctive nose ridges, others they couldn't immediately classify. Children ran past, laughing. Children. In the Origin system, children were either conscripts, refugees, or Tenno, and the Tenno were weapons wrapped in flesh. O'Brien's tricorder hummed steadily. "Fascinating. Your biosigns are unlike anything I've encountered. There's a technological component integrated at the cellular level, but it's not cybernetic in the traditional sense. More like organic technology?" "The Orokin were masters of bioengineering," Excalibur responded. "What you're seeing is the result of centuries of advancement and desperation." Dax's scientific interest sharpened. "Orokin? Your species? A civilization. Long dead. Murdered by their own creations." The security detail shifted uncomfortably. O'Brien and Dax exchanged glances. A civilization killer walking casually through their station. They entered a turbolift. As it ascended toward Ops, Dax ventured carefully. "You said you were pulled through the wormhole during a mission. What kind of mission?" Through Excalibur's optical sensors, the operator considered the question. How to explain what the Tenno were? Mercenaries? Guardians? Weapons pointed by unseen hands toward whatever threatened balance in the Origin system? Elimination, the operator said simply. A Grineer galleon was threatening a mining colony. I was contracted to remove the threat. Contracted? O'Brien frowned. By who? Does it matter? The colony survived. The Grineer learned to avoid that sector. Balance was maintained. The turbolift doors opened onto Ops. Captain Sisko stood at the central console, arms crossed, face unreadable. Around him, officers manned their stations with practiced efficiency. All eyes turned to Excalibur as it stepped onto the command platform. "Welcome to Deep Space Nine," Sisko said. His voice carried natural authority, not the bombastic posturing of Grineer commanders or the cold calculation of Corpus board members. This was leadership earned through respect. "I appreciate you accepting our invitation. It takes courage to walk into an unknown situation. Or necessity," Excalibur replied. "I need information about this region of space. Navigation data. Stellar cartography. Any records of anomalies similar to the one that brought me here. We can provide those things," Sisko said. "But first, I have questions of my own. You emerged from the Celestial Temple, the Bajoran Wormhole. It's not simply an anomaly. It's... well, that's complicated. But entities exist within it. Beings the Bajorans call prophets. Did you encounter anything inside?" Through transference, the operator recalled the passage through the wormhole. There had been something, presences that brushed against their consciousness. Alien and vast, familiar somehow, like distant echoes of the void itself. But unlike the void's chaotic energy, these entities possess structure, purpose. Yes. I felt them. They were curious. Confused. I think they were trying to understand what I was. What the void energy surrounding my ship represented. Major Kira stepped forward, religious fervor barely contained. "The prophets touched you? Spoke to you?" "They didn't speak. They observed. Then they pushed. Ejected my ship into normal space. They wanted me gone." Kira's expression shifted between awe and concern. "The prophets have never rejected anyone from the Celestial Temple before. They exist outside linear time. If they wanted you gone, Perhaps they saw something they didn't want existing near their temple, Sisko said quietly. He studied Excalibur with the intensity of someone who'd conversed with gods and learned they had agendas. Tell me, Tenno, this void energy you mentioned. What is it? The operator hesitated. The void was the Tenno's greatest secret and greatest curse. The interdimensional space that had transformed children into weapons. The source of their power and their damnation. The void is a space between spaces. A dimension that touches all others. It exists outside normal physics. Those exposed to it are changed. Given abilities that defy conventional understanding. Dax's eyes lit up. You're talking about a subspace layer we haven't discovered? Or something more exotic? Transdimensional energy? I don't know your scientific terms. I only know what it does. It allows transference. It grants abilities your technology would call impossible. O'Brien's tricorder beeped insistently. He frowned at the readings. Captain, I'm picking up something odd. The biosigns I'm reading from our guests, they're not emanating from inside the body. It's like they're being projected from somewhere else. And there's a faint energy signature extending back toward the docked ship. Every officer in ops tensed. Hands moved toward weapons. Sisko's expression hardened. Explain, he said, voice level but carrying unmistakable command. The operator made a decision. If these people could detect transference, hiding the truth would only breed suspicion. The Lotus had taught flexibility adapt to circumstances. What you're looking at isn't me, Excalibur said. This is a Warframe. A biomechanical weapon. I'm piloting it remotely from my ship through a process called transference. My consciousness inhabits this frame. But my body remains safely aboard the orbiter. Sisko's jaw tightened. You sent a remote weapon onto my station while keeping yourself safe. That doesn't exactly build trust. Neither does walking unarmed into unknown territory. You have dozens of weapons trained on this position. Your entire station could destroy my ship in seconds. This is prudent caution, not deception. The kid's got a point, O'Brien muttered. Kid? Kira's eyes widened. You're a child? The operator's voice through Excalibur carried something rarely heard from Tenno, a hint of bitter amusement. Does that change the tactical assessment? Major? I've been fighting since before I understood what fighting meant. Age is irrelevant when you're a weapon. Sisko descended from the upper platform, stopping directly in front of Excalibur. Even facing a 7-foot biomechanical warrior, he projected absolute confidence. You're not a weapon on my station. You're a person. A young person, apparently, who needs help. But I need something from you in return for that help. What? What? Trust. Real trust. I want to meet you. Not this frame you're piloting. You. Face to face. No weapons, no remote connections. Just two people talking honestly about the situation you're in. Through Excalibur. The operator felt the weight of that request. The Tenno never revealed themselves. Their operators remained hidden. Safe. Anonymous. The frames were the face of the Tenno. The symbol. The legend. To step forward as themselves was to become vulnerable in ways even the most advanced Warframe couldn't protect against. But stranded in unknown space. Light years from any solar rail. The operator recognized something the Lotus had taught them about deep cover infiltration. Sometimes vulnerability was the only path to intelligence. If I agree, Excalibur said slowly, I want assurances. No weapons. Private meeting. Just you and perhaps one other. And I keep my ship ready for immediate departure. Agreed. Sisko said. 1 hour. My office. You. Me. And Commander Dax for the scientific perspective. Chief O'Brien will ensure your ship remains secure and unmolested. One condition more, the operator added. You've scanned this frame. You know what it's capable of. If your people attempt to seize my ship or prevent my departure, what you've seen so far is a fraction of what a Tenno can do. We maintain balance through overwhelming force. Don't make me demonstrate. Far from being intimidated. Sisko's expression showed something like respect. Understood. And Tenno? In the Federation, we've learned that overwhelming force often creates more problems than it solves. Maybe while you're here, you'll learn there are other ways to maintain balance. Excalibur's head tilted slightly. Maybe. But the Origin system tried peace once. It ended in slaughter. Force is all that remains. Then I'm sorry for what you've experienced. Sisko said genuinely. But you're not in the Origin system anymore. You're in the Alpha Quadrant. Different rules. Different possibilities. The operator processed this. Different possibilities. The words felt foreign, almost dangerous. Possibility implied choice. Choice implied freedom. And the Tenno had never been free, they'd merely been aimed at targets and told it was purpose. 1 hour, Excalibur confirmed. I'll return to my ship and consider your offer. As the Warframe turned and strode toward the turbolift, Dax leaned toward Sisko. Benjamin, you realize we just invited a remote-piloted weapon platform to walk freely through the station? I realize we just met a lost child soldier who's been taught that trust gets you killed. Sisko replied quietly. And if we respond with suspicion and containment, we prove their worldview correct. Sometimes, Dax. The first step toward peace is extending your hand and hoping it doesn't get bitten. And if it does? Sisko watched Excalibur disappear into the turbolift. Then we learned something important about what came through that wormhole. Either way, we move forward with more knowledge than we had. In the turbolift, descending back toward the docking ring, the operator's thoughts raced. The captain's words echoed strangely. Peace. Trust. Different possibilities. Concepts the Lotus had mentioned but never truly explained. The Tenno existed in a state of perpetual conflict, maintaining balance through controlled violence. But what if balance could be achieved another way? What if the Origin system's endless war wasn't the only model? The operator pushed the thoughts aside. Philosophy was a luxury. Survival came first. Intelligence gathering. Finding a way home. Everything else was distraction. Still, as Excalibur returned to the orbiter and the operator's consciousness snapped back into their own body, they couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. The prophets had pushed them into this galaxy for a reason. Whether that reason was blessing or curse remained to be seen. Ortis, prepare medical bay. I'm going back to that station. In person this time. Operator. Is that wise? Inadvisable? Recommended? These people are unknown friendly strangers and you would be vulnerable perfectly safe. The operator began stripping off their transference suit, replacing it with the more formal attire kept for rare diplomatic functions. It's necessary. We need allies. Ortis. Or at least intelligence about this region. I can't get that hiding behind warframes. As they dressed, the operator caught their reflection. Young face. Old eyes. Scars that told stories they couldn't fully remember. The void had taken their childhood and given them power in exchange. Now, in this strange new galaxy, perhaps it was time to remember how to be something other than a weapon. 1 hour until truth. 1 hour until vulnerability. 1 hour until they discovered whether Captain Sisko's vision of different possibilities was wisdom or fatal naivety. The Tenno had maintained balance through force for so long. Perhaps it was time to learn if balance could be maintained through trust. Or perhaps this galaxy would teach them the same lesson the Origin system had. Trust was the first step toward betrayal. And mercy was weakness waiting to be exploited. Only time would tell. The operator stood before the airlock, dressed in the formal attire of a Tenno diplomat, a rare identity they'd assumed perhaps twice in their entire service. Dark armor plates over flexible mesh, the Lotus's symbol embossed subtly on the chest piece. Without the Warframe's bulk, they looked exactly like what they were, a teenager who'd seen too much, survived too much, killed too much. Ortis. You have command. Maintain tactical awareness. If anything feels wrong, Ortis will extract violently retrieve you immediately, operator. Though these Federation people seem genuine suspiciously nice. Perhaps they truly believe in their ideals' foolish optimism? That's what concerns me. No one believes in ideals unless they have the power to enforce them. The operator took a breath. Open the airlock. Open. The corridor beyond was empty except for Chief O'Brien, standing with a casual posture that didn't quite hide his readiness. His eyes widened slightly when he saw the operator's true form. You're just a kid, he said. Then immediately looked embarrassed. Sorry. That came out wrong. I just didn't expect. You expected a warrior. The operator's voice carried no offense. You saw one. This is just the form that pilots the weapon. O'Brien recovered his professional demeanor. Captain Sisko's office is this way. I've been asked to escort you personally. As they walked, he added more gently. For what it's worth. My daughter Molly is about your age. Seeing you. It puts some things in perspective. Your daughter is a soldier? God. No. She's a child. She plays games. Goes to school, complains about homework. O'Brien glanced at the operator. The things a kid should be doing. The Origin system doesn't have that luxury. There are no children. Only survivors waiting to become casualties. They reached Sisko's office, a modest space with windows overlooking the promenade's bustle. The captain stood by his desk, Dax seated nearby with a PADD full of sensor data. Both rose as the operator entered. Sisko's expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, concern, and something the operator recognized from rare encounters with Lotus, protective instinct. Thank you for coming. Please, sit. The operator remained standing, scanning the room automatically. One entrance. Windows that could be breached. Ventilation shafts too small for escape. Acceptable risk parameters. I prefer to stand. As you wish. Sisko settled into his chair, projecting calm authority. Let's start simply. What do I call you? You've referred to yourself as Tenno, but that seems to be a title rather than a name. The operator hesitated. Names were power in the Origin system. Identity was vulnerability, but the Lotus had also taught adaptability. My call sign is Wraith. It's what the Lotus used when assigning missions. Wraith, Dax repeated, making notes. And this Lotus, they're your commanding officer? She was our guide. Our mentor. The voice that gave the Tenno purpose after the old war. The operator's expression tightened. But her signal hasn't reached me since I arrived in this galaxy. I'm operating independently now. Sisko leaned forward. Tell me about the old war. Help me understand what created the Tenno. The operator moved to the window, watching the promenade below. So many people living without fear of immediate violence. Extraordinary. The Orokin Empire spanned the Origin system. They achieved immortality through consciousness transfer, moving between bodies like you might change clothes. They believed themselves gods. Then they created the sentient artificial intelligence designed to terraform distant worlds. But the sentience evolved. Gained consciousness. Turned against their creators. A cautionary tale about artificial intelligence, Dax observed. We've encountered similar situations. The Borg Collective, for instance. The operator turned sharply. Your galaxy has a machine collective? Biomechanical. Actually. They assimilate organic and technological distinctiveness into a hive mind. But continue, what happened with your sentence? The Orokin couldn't defeat them conventionally. So they turned to the Zariman 10-0 incident. A colony ship that attempted jump travel through the void and changed. The adults went mad, killed each other. The children survived. We survived. Exposed to void energy, we developed abilities the Orokin could weaponize. The operator's hands clenched unconsciously. They placed us inside the Warframe's biomechanical weapons grown from a technocyte virus. We became Tenno. Child soldiers piloting living weapons through transference. We turned the tide of the war. We slaughtered sentients by the thousands. Sisko's face had gone very still. The Orokin used children as weapons. They gave us purpose. Without them, we were just monsters the void had broken. Or, Sisko said carefully, they were monsters who exploited traumatized children. He stood, circling to face the operator directly. Wraith, I've commanded soldiers. I've led people into combat where some didn't return. But there's a difference between a soldier who chooses to serve and a child conscripted into warfare. What the Orokin did to you, that's not giving you purpose. That's abuse. The operator's jaw tightened. You don't understand. The Tenno maintain balance across the Origin system. Without us, the Grineer would conquer everything. The Corpus would monetize every life. The Infested would consume all biological matter. We are necessary. Perhaps, Dax interjected gently. But necessary doesn't mean right. And it doesn't mean you can't want something different. She gestured to her pad. I've been analyzing the energy readings from your ship. The void signatures are fascinating. They suggest a dimension with nonlinear temporal properties and exotic matter compositions. But they're also unstable here. Your power source is degrading. The operator felt a chill. Explain. The physics in this region of space, our universe, essentially operate differently than what your void energy expects. It's like trying to run a warp core on incompatible antimatter. Right now, you're operating at maybe 85% efficiency. Over time, that will decrease. Your transference connection will weaken. Eventually, you might lose access to your Warframe entirely. How long? Impossible to say without more data. Weeks? Months? It depends on how much you use your abilities. The operator processed this information with tactical clarity. Stranded. Losing power. No known way home. Every strategic instinct screamed to seize resources, establish dominance, ensure survival through force. But looking at Sisko's earnest expression, Dax's genuine scientific curiosity, even O'Brien's uncomfortable protectiveness, the operator saw something the Origin system had abandoned. People who helped without demanding payment. Why are you telling me this? The operator asked. You could have kept this intelligence advantage. Used it to ensure I'm not a threat. Because that's not who we are. Sisko said simply. The Federation was founded on principles of cooperation, mutual assistance, and the belief that diverse beings working together can achieve more than any could alone. You're lost. You're isolated from everything you know. We can help you find a way home. But more than that. He paused, choosing words carefully. You don't have to be just a weapon, Wraith. There are other ways to live. In the origin system, there aren't. You're not in the origin system anymore. The statement hung in the air. The operator had spent years, their entire conscious life, as a tool pointed at problems until those problems ceased to exist. The concept of being anything else felt foreign, almost threatening. A chime from the office door interrupted the moment. Kira's voice came through the comm. "Captain, we have a situation on the promenade. You need to see this." Sisko activated his desk viewer. The screen showed the promenade's main level where a commotion had gathered. At the center stood a Ferengi merchant, restraint collar in hand, arguing with a Bajoran shopkeeper. Behind the Ferengi, 3 humanoid figures stood motionless, vacant expressions. Neural implants visible at their temples. "That's Koel," Kira said over the comm, disgust evident. "He's been pushing the boundaries of our anti-slavery laws. Claims those people are indentured servants who signed contracts willingly." The operator moved closer to the screen. "Those weren't servants. Those were thralls. Mind-controlled prisoners. Awareness suppressed. Free will stripped away." The origin system had a dozen factions that practiced similar techniques. The Tenno had eliminated many of them. "This is permitted in your federation?" The operator's voice had gone cold. "Absolutely not," Sisko said sharply. "But Cole operates in legal gray areas. The individuals technically signed contracts, though we suspect coercion. Without proof, our hands are tied by our own laws." "Then your laws are insufficient." Sisko gave the operator a measured look. "Perhaps. But we don't solve problems by ignoring the rule of law. We work within the system to change it." "How long does that take?" "Sometimes too long," Sisko admitted. "But it's better than descending into vigilante justice where might makes right." The operator watched the screen. One of the thralls, a young Bajoran woman, had a scar pattern that suggested repeated neural interface violation. Her eyes were empty. Whatever person she'd been was buried under layers of forced compliance. The Lotus had taught the Tenno many things. Tactics. Strategy. How to kill efficiently. But she'd also taught them one fundamental principle. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. Maintain balance. And balance was a living thing that required constant adjustment. "I need to return to my ship," the operator said abruptly. Dax's expression shifted to concern. "Wraith, whatever you're thinking, thank you for the information about the void energy degradation. And for your hospitality." The operator moved toward the door. "I'll consider your offer of assistance." Sisko stood. "Don't do anything rash. We have procedures." "Your procedures move too slowly." The operator paused at the door. "You asked me what the Tenno do. We maintain balance. Sometimes that requires force. Sometimes that requires mercy, but it always requires action. If you interfere with a situation on my station, there will be consequences," Sisko warned. "Then I'll face them. But I won't watch injustice happen because laws move slower than suffering." The operator left before Sisko could respond. O'Brien moved to follow, but Sisko raised a hand. "Let them go, Chief." "Captain. If they're planning what I think, then we'll deal with it when it happens. But consider this, we just told a trained warrior that our system protects slavers behind legal technicalities. What did we expect them to do?" Dax closed her PADD. "Benjamin, the Prime Directive exists for situations exactly like this. We can't let an outside force start dispensing their version of justice on DS9. The Prime Directive applies to pre-warp civilizations, not individuals." Sisko moved to the window, watching the promenade. "But you're right about the larger principle. We need to handle this before Wraith does." Below, Cole was sealing his sale with the Bajoran shopkeeper, handing over the neural controller for one of his thralls in exchange for latinum. The transaction was legal, documented, completely within the boundaries of Federation commerce law. And completely unconscionable. Sisko activated his comm badge. "Odo, this is Captain Sisko. I need you on the promenade. We have a situation developing." The shapeshifter's gruff voice responded immediately. "I'm already watching it, Captain. That Ferengi slug is testing every legal boundary we have. But unless we can prove coercion, work on finding that proof. Quickly. I have a feeling our new guest won't wait for due process." In the docking bay, the operator sealed the airlock behind them and moved swiftly through the orbiter. "Ordis. I need full tactical assessment of the station's promenade level, security positions, civilian density, escape routes. Processing obsessing." "Operator." Ordis must inquire. "Are we liberating, violently rescuing someone? Because if so, this seems unadvisable, absolutely necessary. 3 individuals are being held in neural slavery. The Federation's laws are too slow to help them. The Tenno won't be." The operator moved to the arsenal chamber. Excalibur was an obvious choice, efficient, balanced, reliable. But this required precision, not power. They selected Ash instead, the silent killer. Master of infiltration and surgical elimination. As transference initiated, consciousness flowing into Ash's frame, the operator felt the familiar clarity of purpose. Mission parameters. Extract 3 targets from hostile control. Eliminate the slaver if resistance occurs. Minimize collateral damage. Maintain balance. Simple. Clean. Just. Exactly what the Tenno were made for. On the promenade, Cole finished his transaction and turned to his remaining 2 thralls. Come. We have other buyers to meet. Profitable day. Profitable day indeed. He didn't notice the ventilation grate above him shift slightly. Didn't see the shadow that separated from the ceiling, moving with inhuman silence. Didn't sense the predator until it was far too late. The Tenno had arrived on Deep Space Nine with questions about navigation and physics. Now they were about to teach the station a lesson about the kind of balance maintained by those who'd learned that mercy was a luxury, and justice was a blade. Ash moved through DS9's infrastructure like a ghost through walls. The Warframe's enhanced mobility honed through years of navigating Grineer galleons and Corpus research facilities made the station's service corridors trivial. Ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels, power conduits all became pathways invisible to the crowds below. Through transference, the operator's consciousness rode inside Ash, experiencing the world through sensors that detected heat signatures, electromagnetic fields, and the subtle neural patterns of sentient minds. Below, on the promenade, Cole's 2 remaining thralls registered as dim presences, consciousness suppressed. Autonomic functions operational, but the spark of true awareness buried under layers of technological control. The operator had seen this before. Corpus slavers used similar techniques. The Tenno's response had always been unambiguous. Ordis. I need you to disrupt the neural collar's control frequency. Can you isolate their signal without triggering security alerts? Analyzing, dissecting the technology now, operator. Primitive neural interface, easily compromised, skillfully manipulated. However, Ordis must note, station security is alert, predictably vigilant. The shapeshifter entity is positioning itself near your target. Through Ash's optical sensors, the operator observed Odo materialize from a decorative plant fixture, assuming his humanoid form with liquid fluidity. The changeling approached Cole with the weary determination of someone who dealt with this particular problem repeatedly. Gallo. I need to inspect your merchandise. The Ferengi's lobes twitched with calculated innocence. Constable Odo. Always a pleasure. But as I've explained before, these are legitimate contract workers. All documentation is in order, filed with the proper authorities. I'm sure it is. That's how you operate, always just barely inside the law. Odo circled the 2 thralls, his shapeshifter's senses analyzing them in ways the operator couldn't fully comprehend. But I've been reviewing Bajoran medical records. 3 individuals matching these descriptions disappeared from a refugee camp 2 months ago. Families reported them missing. Terrible tragedy, but completely unrelated to my business. These individuals approached me seeking employment. With neural implants already installed? Try again. The operator watched the confrontation. Ash's frame motionless in the shadows above. This Odo was competent, dedicated, working within his system's constraints. But constraints were exactly the problem. How many days would investigation take? How many hearings? While legal processes ground forward, those 2 prisoners remained trapped inside their own skulls. The Tenno didn't have the luxury of patience. The origin system had taught them that evil unchallenged multiplied exponentially, but something about Sisko's words echoed in the operator's mind. We work within the system to change it. Was that wisdom or weakness? The Lotus had never given clear guidance on such philosophical questions. She'd simply assigned targets and expected results. A new presence entered the promenade, Captain Sisko himself, moving with purposeful strides toward the confrontation. His expression suggested someone who'd made a decision he didn't particularly like but recognized as necessary. Gah. By authority of Starfleet Command and the Bajoran Provisional Government, I'm placing your contract workers in protective custody pending investigation into their legal status. Cole's expression twisted into commercial outrage. This is harassment. I have rights. The Ferengi Commerce Authority will hear about this illegal seizure. You have rights, Sisko agreed. And they'll be respected. You'll receive compensation if your claims prove legitimate. But those 2 are coming with us now. Odo. Take them to the infirmary. Dr. Bashir will examine them and document everything. The operator watched as Odo gently guided the thralls away. They moved with mechanical compliance, showing no awareness of their liberation. That would come later. After medical intervention removed the implants and restored their consciousness. If restoration was even possible. Cole sputtered protests but didn't physically resist. Smart. The promenade was full of witnesses, security was watching, and Federation law, however slow, did eventually catch those who pushed too far. The situation was resolving peacefully, through official channels, exactly as Cisco had promised. The operator felt an unfamiliar sensation, doubt. Had they been wrong to prepare for violence? The Origin system's endless conflict had trained them to see every problem as requiring a blade solution, but this captain had achieved the same result through different means. Ortis, cancel the collar disruption protocol. Stand down from combat alert. Understood. Relieved. Operator. Ortis observes you are learning adapting to these people's methods. Is this wise progressive? The Origin system taught us that mercy hesitation leads to exploitation opportunity for enemies. Maybe. But we're not in the Origin system anymore. Ash retreated through the ventilation system, moving back toward the docking ring. The operator's mind churned with uncomfortable realizations. For years, the Lotus had provided absolute clarity. Here is the target, here is the threat, eliminate it, maintain balance. Simple. Direct. Effective. But what if balance could be maintained without elimination? What if there were gradients between mercy and violence that the Tenno had never learned to navigate? The operator was contemplating this when Ash's motion sensors detected movement behind them in the maintenance tunnel. Fast. Precise. Following. The Warframe spun, blade materializing in its hand, energy crackling along the edge. In the tunnel's shadows stood a human male, middle-aged, nondescript features, wearing a Starfleet uniform with no rank insignia. His expression held neither fear nor aggression. Just calculation. Impressive reflexes. The man said casually. But you can lower the blade. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to talk. You followed me. Ash's synthesized voice carried the operator's suspicion. I've been following you since you arrived. That's my job, knowing who's on this station and whether they represent an opportunity or a threat. The man stepped closer, unconcerned by the blade. Section 31. We handle Federation security matters that Starfleet Command finds uncomfortable. The operator knew that organizational structure. Every civilization had them, the operators who worked in shadows, who did what official channels couldn't acknowledge. The Corpus had the board's adjusters. The Grenier had the Queen's personal executors. Even the Lotus operated in similar gray spaces. What do you want? To make you an offer. The man, he hadn't provided a name, which told the operator everything about his organization, leaned against the tunnel wall. You're stranded here. Your power source is degrading. You need a way home. I can help with that. In exchange for? Information first. Tell me about the Origin system. Your factions. Their capabilities. Especially this void energy that has our scientists baffled. Why? Because knowledge is security. Your arrival proves that our universe connects to others. We need to understand what else might come through. And he smiled slightly. Because you're exactly the kind of asset Section 31 occasionally requires. Someone who operates outside conventional chains of command. Someone whose capabilities exceed normal parameters. Someone who understands that sometimes problems need to be cut away rather than negotiated with. The operator recognized recruitment when they heard it. The Corpus had tried similar approaches with Tenno operatives before. It always ended badly for the Corpus. I don't work for your organization. Not asking you to. Just consider us friends. Friends who can provide resources. Intelligence. Technology. We've already begun analyzing the wormhole readings from your arrival. We might find a way to replicate the phenomenon. Send you home. And the price? Occasional favors. Nothing that would violate your principles. I've observed your code. You maintain balance, eliminate threats, protect the vulnerable. We do the same thing. We're just not as honest about it as the Tenno are. Through Ash's optical sensors, the operator studied this Section 31 operative. He spoke truth mixed with manipulation. A dangerous combination. The offer itself had merit. Resources to return home were invaluable, but accepting such assistance created obligation. And obligation was a chain disguised as cooperation. I'll consider it, the operator said carefully. That's all I ask. Here. The man produced a small device. Communication frequency. Encrypted. Untraceable. When you want to talk, use this. I'm Sloan. By the way. And Wraith? Welcome to the Alpha Quadrant. You're going to find we're not so different from your Origin system. We just pretend otherwise. He turned and walked into the shadows, disappearing with practiced ease. The operator stood motionless, processing the encounter. Section 31 represented exactly the kind of organization the Lotus had worked with, occasionally pragmatic, effective, morally flexible, but the Lotus had always maintained the Tenno's independence. Taking contracts was different from accepting patronage. Ash returned to the orbiter without further incident. As transference released and the operator's consciousness returned to their own body, they found Ortis displaying multiple message alerts. Operator, you have received a formal invitation-friendly summons from Captain Sisko. He requests your presence for a diplomatic dinner-friendly interrogation this evening. Also, the shapeshifter entity named Odo wishes to speak with you regarding your tactical assessment suspicious surveillance of the promenade earlier. The operator removed their transference suit, muscles aching from the extended connection. The dimensional barrier made every session more taxing than it should be. Dax's warning about power degradation felt more real now. Accept Sisko's invitation. Tell Odo I'll meet with him tomorrow. And Ortis analyzed the communication device Sloane gave us. I want to know exactly what technology we're dealing with. Compliance, enthusiastic obedience. Though Ortis must note, we are accumulating many social obligations, strategic relationships. This is unusual, unprecedented for Tenno operations. Yes. It is. The operator moved to the observation deck, looking out at DS9's bulk. Through the windows, they could see the promenade's lights, the constant flow of people living their lives without immediate threat. Ortis, how long have we been operational as a Tenno? Since emergence from the second dream, approximately 7 years, eternal lifetimes, though memories from before remain fragmented, mercifully incomplete. 7 years of missions. 7 years of eliminating threats, maintaining balance, operating as a weapon pointed at problems. The Lotus had been their constant, their guide, their only source of stability in the Origin system's chaos. Now, in this galaxy, that guidance was gone. The operator was making decisions independently, choosing when to act, when to hold back, who to trust. It felt simultaneously liberating and terrifying. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. The screen showed Jadzia Dax's smiling face. Wraith? I wanted to follow up on our conversation earlier. I've been running simulations on your void energy signatures, and I think I've found something interesting. The Bajoran Wormhole isn't just a stable wormhole, it's maintained by the prophets, beings who exist outside linear time. Their technology, if you can call it that, might interact with your void energy in unexpected ways. The operator leaned forward. Explain. The prophets exist in a state of temporal simultaneity, past, present, and future occurring simultaneously for them. Your void seems to have similar properties based on the exotic matter signatures. It's possible that if we could communicate with the prophets, they might understand how to stabilize your power source. Or even how to recreate the conditions that brought you here. You're suggesting I talk to the entities that pushed me out of the wormhole. I know it's risky. But they're not hostile, just confused by linear existence. With the right approach, they might help. Captain Sisko has communicated with them before. He could facilitate. The operator considered this. The prophets represented an unknown variable, powerful entities with incomprehensible motivations. In the Origin system, the operator would simply avoid such complications. But stranded here, running out of time as their powers degraded, conventional caution was a luxury they couldn't afford. I'll discuss it with Sisko at dinner tonight. Dax's expression brightened. Excellent. And Wraith? Thank you for not interfering on the promenade earlier. I know you wanted to act. Restraint can be harder than violence sometimes. Sometimes, the operator agreed. But Captain Sisko achieved the result I wanted. Perhaps his methods have merit. High praise from a warrior. Dax smiled. See you tonight. And dress comfortably, it's a casual dinner. Sisko's making his famous jambalaya. The transmission ended. The operator stood alone in the observation deck, watching Deep Space Nine's lights reflect off the orbiter's hull. Somewhere on that station, former thralls were receiving medical care. A Ferengi slaver was learning that some boundaries couldn't be crossed even with legal documentation. A shapeshifter enforced law with dedication despite knowing the system's imperfections. A captain led through example rather than force. And a secret organization lurked in shadows, offering assistance wrapped in obligation. The Origin system had never prepared the operator for this complexity. Their factions were clear: Grenier, Corpus, Infested, Sentence. Threats were obvious. Solutions were direct. Balance was maintained through controlled violence. Here, in the Alpha Quadrant, balance seemed to require something different. Something the Tenno had never learned. Patience. Diplomacy. Trust. The operator wasn't sure they were capable of such things. But they were learning. Adapting. Surviving in a new environment through methods other than overwhelming force. Perhaps that, too, was what it meant to be Tenno. Not just the blade in darkness, but the mind that chose when to draw the blade and when to sheath it. The Lotus would have been proud. Or horrified. The operator wasn't sure which. Outside, the Bajoran Wormhole opened briefly, some ship returning from the Gamma Quadrant. The exotic phenomenon that had brought them here pulsed with energies the operator's senses recognized as similar to the void yet fundamentally different. Somewhere inside that wormhole, beings existed who might hold answers. Beings who'd pushed the operator away but hadn't destroyed them. Perhaps it was time to ask why. Perhaps it was time to learn if the Tenno could maintain balance through means other than the blade. Perhaps it was time to discover what a weapon became when it chose its own purpose. Captain Sisko's quarters carried the warmth of lived experience, family photos, African art, a baseball in a display case that spoke of traditions carried across centuries and light years. The operator stood in the doorway, momentarily disoriented by the domesticity. Tenno didn't have homes. They had orbiters. Functional spaces designed for weapon maintenance and mission preparation. This was something else entirely. Come in, Wraith. Don't be shy. Sisko stood at a cooking surface, stirring a pot that released aromatic steam. I hope you're hungry. I made enough for an army. Dax sat at the table, already nursing a glass of red wine. Benjamin insists on cooking when he's working through complicated problems. We're all beneficiaries of his stress. But, the operator entered cautiously, cataloging exits and potential threats out of habit. I've never had jambalaya. Then you're in for an experience. Sisko ladled the steaming mixture into bowls. Rice, sausage, chicken, vegetables, and about a dozen spices that remind me of home. My father's recipe. He runs a restaurant in New Orleans. Earth. Best Creole food in the Federation. They sat. The operator lifted a spoonful experimentally. The flavors exploded across their palate: heat, complexity, richness, unlike anything the orbiter's synthesizers produced. In the origin system, nutrition was efficiency. This was something beyond sustenance. This is remarkable. Sisko smiled. Food is more than fuel. It's culture. Memory. Connecting to where you come from, even when you're far from home. His expression grew more serious. Which brings us to the real conversation. You were on the promenade today. In the ventilation system above Cole. The operator set down their spoon. You knew. Odo detected an anomalous heat signature. We didn't know it was you until later, but we suspected. You were prepared to intervene. I was prepared to liberate prisoners. Your laws were moving too slowly. And yet you didn't act. Sisko studied the operator. Why? Because you achieved the result I wanted. You used your authority to remove those people from danger. Different method. Same outcome. The operator met his gaze. But what if you hadn't? What if Cole had resisted? Would you have let those prisoners remain enslaved while your legal processes debated jurisdiction? No, Sisko said firmly. I would have found another way. Perhaps not as direct as you would have chosen, but I would have acted. He paused. The difference is, I'm bound by the institutions I represent. The Federation, Starfleet, the Bajoran government. Those institutions have rules designed to prevent abuse of power. Sometimes those rules are frustrating. But they exist for good reasons. And when the rules protect the guilty, then we work to change the rules. Dax interjected. I know that sounds idealistic to someone from your background. But the Federation has evolved precisely because people pushed against unjust laws. It's slower than direct action. But it creates lasting change. The operator consumed another spoonful, processing this philosophy. In the origin system, institutions failed. The Orokin Council claimed to govern justly while practicing immortality through body theft. The Corpus preached prosperity while enslaving entire colonies. The Grenier Queens demand loyalty while treating their clones as expendable ammunition. Institutions become the very tyranny they claim to prevent. That's a risk, Sisko acknowledged. Which is why the Federation has checks and balances. Multiple species contributing perspectives. Transparent governance. And yes, even troublesome officers like me who push boundaries when necessary. He smiled slightly. I've been known to bend rules when the situation demands it. But I try to work within the system first. Why? Because the alternative is might makes right. And once you embrace that philosophy, you become what you're fighting against. Sisko's eyes held the weight of experience. I've seen it happen. Good people, with good intentions, deciding they know better than everyone else. Becoming dictators who justify every abuse through noble goals. The operator thought of the Orokin. Had they started with noble intentions? Before the immortality obsession, before the exploitation, had there been a moment when they simply wanted to build something better? The Tenno maintain balance. The operator said quietly. We prevent any single faction from dominating, but we do it through force. Through being the blade hanging over every would-be conqueror's head. Is that any different from what you describe? Honest question? Dax said. I don't know. Balance through force is still force. It might prevent the worst outcomes, but it doesn't create the conditions for genuine peace. It just maintains controlled conflict. Controlled conflict is preferable to uncontrolled slaughter. Agreed, Sisko said. But what if there's a third option? What if balance could be maintained through cooperation rather than threat? Through shared interests rather than shared fear? The Federation, the operator said. That's your third option. It's an attempt at one. Imperfect. Constantly challenged. Requiring enormous effort to maintain. But it's better than the alternative. Sisko leaned back. Wraith, I'm not trying to convert you to Federation philosophy. You have your own code. Earned through experiences I can't fully comprehend. But while you're here, I'd like you to consider that maybe the Origin System's way isn't the only way. The operator absorbed this. Sisko wasn't demanding compliance or offering empty platitudes. He was presenting alternative frameworks and trusting the operator to evaluate them independently. Respect through intellectual engagement rather than force. Revolutionary concept. Dax mentioned you've communicated with the prophets, the operator said, changing subjects. The entities in the wormhole. Sisko's expression shifted, something complex passed across his features. Pride. Burden. Uncertainty. Yes. The prophets exist outside linear time. To them, past and future are as present as now. They're also deeply connected to Bajoran spirituality. The Bajorans believe the prophets are gods. What do you believe? I believe they're powerful beings I don't fully understand. They've shown me things. Visions. Alternate timelines. Possibilities. They seem to care about Bajor, though their reasons remain opaque. He studied the operator. They pushed you out of the wormhole. That's unusual. The prophets typically don't interact with travelers except to allow passage. They sense the void energy. It disturbed them somehow. Dax thinks the void might interact with their dimension in destabilizing ways. Sisko said. But she also thinks they might be able to help you. If we can communicate properly. You can facilitate this? I can try. The prophets and I have a relationship. They call me the Sisko. They've invested something in me I don't fully comprehend. He smiled wryly. Apparently I'm important to Bajor's future. Though they communicate in riddles. The operator considered the strategic value. The prophets represented access to exotic physics, potential answers about stabilizing void energy, possibly even methods to return home. But they also represented unknown risks. Entities who existed outside normal causality could manipulate events in ways impossible to predict or counter. I accept the risk. When can we attempt contact? Tomorrow. I'll take you to the wormhole entrance. We'll send a signal and see if they respond. Sisko's expression grew serious. But understand, the prophets don't think like we do. They might show you things you don't want to see. Your past, your future, alternate versions of yourself. They explore consciousness in ways that can be disorienting. The void has already shown me my past. I've relived the Zariman incident in dreams countless times. Whatever the prophets show me can't be worse than what I already carry. Dax and Sisko exchanged glances that suggested they'd both experienced the prophet's particular brand of revelation. Neither looked entirely convinced by the operator's confidence. Before the conversation could continue, Sisko's combadge chirped. Kira's voice came through, urgent and clipped. Captain, you need to get to ops immediately. We're receiving distress signals from a Federation transport ship near the Badlands. They're under attack. Sisko was moving before she finished. On my way. What kind of attack? That's the problem, sir. They're describing weapons fire that doesn't match any known technology. Energy signatures are completely unfamiliar. And they're saying the attacking ship appeared out of nowhere. No warp signature, no subspace distortion. It just materialized. The operator stood, following Sisko and Dax as they rushed toward ops. Through the orbiter's passive connection, they could sense Ortis monitoring station communications, analyzing the tactical situation. Ortis, get me full sensor data on that distress signal. Accessing infiltrating station networks now, operator. Ortis concurs with the assessment. Energy signatures are UN familiar recognizable. They match Corpus plasma technology. Operator. That attacking vessel uses Origin system weapons. The operator's blood ran cold. Corpus. Here. In the Alpha Quadrant. They reached ops simultaneously with the escalating crisis. On the main view screen, static-filled transmissions showed a Federation transport civilian design. Minimal weapons taking fire from a vessel that made the operator's heart sink. Sleek white and blue hull. Geometric precision, unmistakable Corpus aesthetics. A raiding frigate. Designed for rapid strikes against vulnerable targets. They're tearing through the transport shields, O'Brien reported. At this rate, Hull breach in 3 minutes. Sisko's command voice cut through the chaos. Get the Defiant ready for launch. Red alert status. Prepare rescue shuttles. Captain. The operator stepped forward. That ship is from my universe. Corpus design. They're raiders. They'll strip the transport for technology and raw materials, then leave survivors to die in space. Standard operating procedure. Can we negotiate? The Corpus only negotiate when facing superior firepower. Otherwise, they take what they want. Profit above all else. Emberfight. Sisko's jaw tightened. Then we show them superior firepower. Chief. How long until Defiant is ready? 10 minutes minimum. The transport doesn't have 10 minutes. Sisko turned to the operator. Your ship, can it reach them faster? The operator calculated. The orbiter wasn't a combat vessel, not really. But it had mobility advantages over conventional ships, and the railjack armaments, while depleted from the Void Storm transition, still functioned. Yes. But engaging Corpus forces violates your Prime Directive, doesn't it? I'm an outside force interfering with first contact. The Prime Directive applies to civilizations, not pirates attacking Federation citizens. Sisko's eyes held absolute certainty. If you can save those people, I'm authorizing you to engage. The operator felt something shift internally. This was a mission. Clear objectives. Defined threat. Authorized action. Familiar territory. But this time, they weren't taking orders from the Lotus or operating independently. They were working with someone. Under someone's authority. Cooperation, not isolation. Understood. Captain. I'll stop them. Wraith Sisko caught the operator's shoulder as they turned to leave. No unnecessary casualties. Disable them if possible. We'd like prisoners to question about how they got here. The operator nodded. I'll do what the situation allows. They sprinted toward the docking bay, consciousness already reaching toward the orbiter, toward transference, toward the familiar clarity of combat where moral complexity dissolved into tactical simplicity. The Corpus had followed them somehow. Which meant the barrier between universes was more permeable than anyone realized. Which meant the origin system's conflicts were bleeding into the Alpha Quadrant. The Tenno's war had just expanded to a new galaxy. And this time, they'd be fighting not for balance, but for people who'd shown them there were other ways to live. People who'd offered trust instead of contracts. Cooperation instead of exploitation. People who might become what the Lotus had been a reason to fight beyond mere survival. The operator reached the orbiter and initiated transference. Consciousness flowing into their warframe with practiced ease. But as power surged through the biomechanical frame, they felt the degradation Dax had warned about. Slower response. Increased latency. The dimensional barrier taking its toll. Time was running out in more ways than one. But right now, there were lives to save and Corpus raiders to stop. Philosophy could wait. Action was required. The Tenno were very good at action. The orbiter detached from DS9 with none of the ceremony of Federation starships. No warp nacelles glowing to life. No subspace ripple announcing departure. The ship simply moved propulsion systems derived from Orokin technology that still confounded the origin system's best engineers. Within seconds, the station fell away as the operator pushed the engines beyond standard parameters. Through the railjack's integration systems, tactical displays painted the battlefield in stark clarity. The Federation transport was a wallowing target shields at 20%, hull breaches venting atmosphere, 3 of its 4 engines offline. Circling it like a predator was the Corpus frigate, smaller than Federation designs but bristling with weapons that fired coherent plasma bursts in colors the operator knew intimately. Blue-white death that could tear through Grineer armor, or reduce infested swarms to molecular ash. Ortis. Weapons status. Railjack armaments at 67% disappointingly adequate capacity. Operator. The Void Storm depleted inconveniently damaged our munitions stores. We have sufficient ordnance for sustained engagement brief skirmish but extended combat would be inadvisable absolutely thrilling. The operator's hands moved across controls that responded to thought as much as touch another gift of transference technology. Route all available power to forward batteries. I want one clean shot to disable their main reactor. Operator. The Corpus will have adapted stubbornly improved their shielding since our last engagement. A single shot may prove insufficient perfectly devastating. Then I'll board them. On DS9, Sisko watched the orbiter accelerate to velocities that made O'Brien shake his head in disbelief. That ship's pulling acceleration that would turn a human crew into paste. How is Wraith surviving those G-forces? Maybe they're not aboard, Dax suggested, fingers dancing across her sensor station. Remember transference. They could be piloting remotely while their body remains protected. Kira leaned forward. Captain, we're reading weapons charge from the orbiter. They're preparing to engage. The Corpus frigate detected the approaching vessel, sensors locked on, weapons swiveled, and targeting solutions calculated. But the raiders had grown complacent in the origin system, accustomed to overwhelming technological superiority over their typical targets. They didn't recognize threat until it was too late. The orbiter's railjack batteries spoke with voices like tearing reality. Particle beams, not the familiar phasers of Federation technology, but something more exotic, energies drawn from the same void that had transformed the Tenno, lanced across space. The Corpus shields flared, adapted, began compensating. Then the second volley struck from a different angle. The orbiter had used its superior maneuverability to strafe, hitting the frigate's weak points with precision born from years of hunting such vessels across the origin system's asteroid fields and planetary orbits. The Corpus shields collapsed. Direct hit on their reactor, O'Brien reported, incredulous. That ship just surgical struck a target moving at combat speed from 3,000 kilometers out. That shouldn't be possible. The Tenno are weapon specialists, Dax observed. We're watching someone who's been fighting their entire conscious life. This is what they do. The Corpus frigate's engines sputtered, main power failing. Auxiliary systems kicked in, but the vessel was crippled. Inside, the operator knew. Corpus crew members would be initiating emergency protocols, sealing compartments, rerouting power, preparing for boarding action or immediate evacuation. The operator gave them no time for either. Orders. Hold position between the transport and the Corpus vessel. Deploy Archwing. The orbiter's deployment bay opened. Into the void of space launched a figure in powered armor, wings of energy unfurling like an avenging angel. The operator's consciousness rode inside their warframe. They'd switched to Excalibur for this. Its balanced capabilities better suited for ship-to-ship boarding, as the Archwing propulsion carried them across the gap at speeds that would have impressed even Starfleet's best pilots. Corpus hull plating resisted briefly before Excalibur's energy blade carved through. The warframe pulled itself into the breach, entering the frigate's interior where artificial gravity and atmosphere remained functional. Emergency lighting cast everything in red urgency. 3 Corpus crewmen, robotics specialists in their characteristic suits, reached for plasma weapons. The operator moved before conscious thought completed. Excalibur flowed through combat forms perfected across 1,000 similar boarding actions. Blade met weapon. Disarming without killing. Strikes to nerve clusters induced unconsciousness without permanent damage. Cisco had requested prisoners. The operator would deliver. More crew members rushed the corridor. These were Corpus Marines, better trained and equipped than standard technicians. They opened fire with coordinated discipline, plasma bursts painting the walls with scorching heat. Excalibur's shields flared, absorbing impacts while the operator calculated angles. The Lotus had taught countless lessons, but one stood paramount: economy of motion, never waste energy. Every action serves multiple purposes. The warframe launched forward, using the Marines' own crossfire against them. Bodies positioned so that missed shots struck comrades. Movement that turned their formation into an obstacle. Within seconds, 6 Marines lay unconscious on the deck plating. Neural strike points precisely targeted. Ordis, how many crew aboard this vessel? Scanning invasively, detecting now. Approximately 23. Disappointingly few Corpus personnel. Mostly technicians, delightfully vulnerable with minimal combat training. Operator, you've already neutralized, mercifully spared 1/3 of their complement. The operator moved deeper into the ship, following metal schematics of Corpus frigate layouts burned into memory through repetition. Bridge would be forward. Engineering aft. Life support and crew quarters midship. Standard configuration. The bridge doors were sealed, reinforced. Through the small viewport, the operator glimpsed 3 figures, 1 in the elaborate suit of a Corpus ship captain, 2 in the lighter armor of junior officers. The captain was shouting orders, face twisted with calculation rather than fear. Corpus didn't fear death. They feared unprofitability. The operator placed Excalibur's hand against the door. Void energy surged, the power that had transformed children into weapons, the interdimensional force that defied physical law. The door's locking mechanism simply ceased to function. Molecular bonds loosened. Electromagnetic seals dissolved. The door opened. Tenno. The Corpus captain's shock was absolute. Impossible. This region has no solar rails, no void gates, no. His tactical mind caught up with surprise. You came through the anomaly. You're stranded here. Surrender your vessel, Excalibur stated. Your crew will be taken into custody by Federation authorities. Comply, and you'll be treated according to their laws. Resist, and you'll learn why the Corpus board fears the Tenno. The captain's hand moved toward a control panel. The operator recognized the gesture: ship self-destruct initialization. Corpus protocol when capture was imminent. Destroy all technology. Eliminate evidence. Prevent enemy acquisition of assets. Excalibur crossed the bridge in a blur. The blade didn't kill, merely severed the captain's connection to the control panel, energy discharge causing his hand to spasm and release. A precise strike to the base of the skull, and the captain crumpled. The two junior officers raised their hands immediately. Smart. They'd witnessed what happened to those who resisted Tenno. The survivors told stories across the Origin system: better to surrender than face the blade. Ordis. Inform DS9 the vessel is secured. 15 crew members unconscious. 8 surrendered peacefully. No casualties. Ready for Federation boarding. Compliance enthusiastic reporting. Operator, you've conducted a textbook operation, surprisingly gentle boarding action. The Lotus would be proud, mildly approving. But the Lotus wasn't here. And the operator had conducted this mission not for balance across the Origin system, but because a Federation captain had asked for help saving his people. Different motivation, different context. Same result. Threat neutralized. Innocents saved. Minimal casualties. Through the frigate's viewports, the operator watched DS9's runabout approach, Sisko himself piloting. Security teams aboard ready to take custody of prisoners. The Federation transport had stabilized, damage control teams sealing breaches, survivors being evacuated to the runabout's medical bay. The operator stood on the Corpus Bridge, surrounded by unconscious raiders from a universe that shouldn't connect to this one, and felt the weight of implications crashing down. The Corpus were here, which meant the dimensional barrier was failing, which meant eventually, other factions might follow. Grineer war fleets. Infested hive ships. Perhaps even sentience. The Origin system's conflicts could consume the Alpha Quadrant. The Federation's idealistic peace would crumble under the weight of civilizations that had spent millennia perfecting warfare as an art form, unless the Tenno maintained balance here too. The runabout docked with the Corpus frigate. Sisko entered the bridge. Phaser drawn but pointed safely downward. Security team flanking him. His eyes swept the scene, unconscious crew members arranged carefully, weapons secured in a corner, no sign of excessive violence. Impressive work, Sisko said. You took the ship without killing anyone. You requested prisoners. I delivered. The operator gestured to the captain. That one tried to initiate self-destruct. The others surrendered peacefully. Sisko's security team began restraining and checking the unconscious Corpus crew. The captain was already stirring, groaning as consciousness returned. His eyes focused on Sisko, then widened. You're Federation? Starfleet? The captain's accent carried the distinctive Corpus intonation, every word calculated for maximum efficiency. This is a mistake. Our organization means no harm to your people. This was simply a salvage operation. You were attacking a civilian transport. Sisko cut him off. Your weapons caused casualties. You'll be held accountable under Federation law. Federation law? The captain's expression shifted to something like amusement. We're not part of your Federation. We're from a completely different universe. You have no jurisdiction over Corpus operations. We do now, Sisko said firmly. You attacked our people in our space. That makes it our jurisdiction. He turned to the operator. How did they get here? If you came through the wormhole accidentally, how did an entire ship follow? The operator had been wondering the same thing. They moved to the Corpus navigation console, accessing data with familiarity born from hundreds of similar raids. The information painted a disturbing picture. They didn't follow me. They came through a different anomaly, a spatial tier approximately 6 light-years from here. According to their logs, the Corpus detected unusual energy signatures 3 weeks ago. They sent a scout ship to investigate. When it didn't return, they sent this frigate. 3 weeks? Dax's voice came through Sisko's comm badge she'd been monitoring from DS9. Benjamin. That's before Wraith arrived. The dimensional barriers were weakening before the Tenno came through. Which means this is a larger phenomenon, Sisko concluded. Not just one random occurrence, but systematic breakdown of the barriers between universes. He looked at the operator. What else is in your Origin system that might come through? The operator's voice carried grim certainty. Everything. The Grineer Empire cloned soldiers numbering in the billions. The infested technocide plague that converts biological matter into hive-minded horrors. The sentence machine intelligence that nearly destroyed our civilization. If the barriers continue failing, this galaxy will become a battlefield. Sisko's expression hardened. Then we need to understand what's causing the breakdown and stop it. But first he gestured to the captured Corpus crew. We need to learn everything they know about these spatial tiers. Wraith. I'll need you to help with interrogation. You understand their culture, their motivations. The Corpus worship Prophet. Offer them something valuable, and they'll cooperate. Threaten their profit margins, and they'll fight to the death. Then we'll make cooperation more profitable than resistance. Sisko activated his comm badge. Odo. Prepare interrogation facilities. We have 15 new guests who are going to tell us everything about where they came from and how they got here. As the security team led the Corpus prisoners away, the captain locked eyes with the operator. Tenno. When the board learns what's happened here, when they discover a new galaxy full of resources and primitive technology, they'll send entire flotillas. Your presence here won't stop them. It'll encourage them. Then they'll learn the same lesson you did, the operator replied. The Tenno maintain balance. We did it in the origin system. We'll do it here. The captain laughed a bitter sound. You're one Tenno. The board commands thousands of ships, millions of personnel, resources beyond counting. And you're losing your connection to the void. I can see it in your frame's energy signature. Degrading. Weakening. How long before you're just another lost child in a universe you don't understand? Excalibur's blade ignited. Blue energy crackling mere inches from the captain's throat. Long enough. Stand down, Wraith. Sisko's voice carried command but not condemnation. He's trying to provoke you. Don't give him the satisfaction. The operator deactivated the blade. The captain was right, which made his words more dangerous than any weapon. The void connection was degrading. Power was failing. Without intervention, the operator would eventually lose transference entirely, becoming just another stranded refugee in an unfamiliar galaxy. But the captain was also wrong about one thing. The operator wasn't alone anymore. They had allies now. Resources. People who demonstrated they could achieve through cooperation what force alone couldn't accomplish. Perhaps that would be enough. The runabout returned to DS9, prisoners secured, wreckage of the Corpus frigate in tow for analysis. As the operator guided the orbiter back to its docking berth, Ortis provided running commentary. Operator. You've made quite the impression worrying display on these Federation people. They now understand that the Tenno are formidable, terrifyingly efficient. However, Ortis must note, the Corpus captain spoke truth, uncomfortable reality. Our power reserves are depleting, catastrophically diminishing. Without solution, we have perhaps 3 months, endless eternity before transference becomes impossible, completely functional. 3 months. 90 days to find a solution, or become permanently severed from the warframes that had defined the operator's existence since awakening from the second dream. 3 months to save this galaxy from the origin system's conflicts. Or watch the Federation's idealistic peace burn under Grineer warfleets and Corpus exploitation. 3 months to learn if a weapon could become something more than what it was forged to be. The operator sealed the orbiter and emerged onto DS9's docking ring. Sisko was waiting, along with Dax and a figure the operator hadn't seen before, an older human male in Starfleet medical uniform, concern etched across his features. This is Dr. Julian Bashir, our chief medical officer, Sisko introduced. I'd like him to examine you. Your confrontation with the Corpus captain revealed something concerning your experiencing power degradation faster than we initially estimated. The operator tensed. Medical examination meant vulnerability. Exposure. Trusting strangers with knowledge of Tenno biology. Every instinct screamed refusal, but Dax had been right about the void energy degradation. And Bashir looked at the operator not with clinical detachment but genuine concern, the expression of someone who saw a patient needing help rather than a specimen for study. All right. The operator agreed. But the examination happens on my ship. My terms. Understood, Bashir said gently. I'm not here to exploit you, I'm here to help. As they walked toward the orbiter, the operator reflected on how much had changed in just 2 days. They'd arrived in this galaxy alone, suspicious, prepared to fight their way through any obstacle. Now they were accepting help, working with authorities, trusting people they barely knew. The Lotus would have called it strategic adaptation. The operator suspected it might be something more dangerous, hope that a different way of living was possible. Hope was the most treacherous weapon of all. It made you vulnerable to disappointment, made you care about outcomes beyond mere survival. But perhaps that too was part of learning to be more than just a weapon. Dr. Bashir's tricorder hummed with diagnostic frequencies as he scanned the operator in the orbiter's medical bay. The Tenno sat on the examination platform, stripped of their armor to the basic undersuit. Watching the doctor's expressions shift from curiosity to concern to something approaching alarm. Fascinating, Bashir murmured. Your cellular structure shows evidence of massive trauma that's been not healed exactly, but stabilized at the molecular level, and there's an energy signature permeating your entire body, this void energy, Commander Dax mentioned. It's integrated so deeply it might as well be part of your biology. The void changed us, the operator said quietly. The Zeriman 10-0 incident exposed us to energies that shouldn't exist in normal space. We survived, But we're not entirely human anymore. Not in the way you'd understand. And this transference ability projecting your consciousness into the warframes that's powered by the void energy? Bashir's tricorder beeped insistently. I'm reading instabilities in your neural pathways. Synaptic degradation, particularly in the regions that would handle the kind of quantum entanglement consciousness transfer would require. The operator felt cold spread through their chest. How bad? Bashir's expression was grave. At the current rate of degradation, you have approximately 10 to 12 weeks before transference becomes dangerous to attempt. Beyond that point, projecting your consciousness into the warframes could result in permanent dissociation, your mind trapped in the machine while your body becomes comatose. Or worse, complete neural collapse. Can you stop it? I don't know. This is beyond anything in Starfleet medical databases. Bashir set down his tricorder, meeting the operator's eyes with practiced compassion. But I'm not giving up. With your permission, I'd like to work with Commander Dax. Her expertise in theoretical physics combined with my medical knowledge might yield solutions. The key is understanding why the void energy is destabilizing in this universe. The operator nodded slowly. 12 weeks. Even less than Ortis had estimated. The countdown had accelerated. Do whatever you need to do. There's something else. Bashir hesitated. The scans show evidence of repeated physical trauma. Healed fractures, tissue damage, neural stress markers. Wraith, how long have you been fighting? Since I was younger than I am now. I don't remember much from before the Zariman incident. The void took those memories. Took childhood, replaced it with training. With missions. You're what, 16? 17? 15? Maybe 16. The Lotus never prioritized birthdays. Bashir's jaw tightened. You're a child. By any reasonable standard, you're a child who's been forced to fight a war that should have been ended by adults. He placed a hand on the operator's shoulder, gentle contact that made the Tenno flinch reflexively before forcing stillness. Whatever else happens, know this, what was done to you wasn't justice. It wasn't necessary. It was exploitation of trauma victims. The operator wanted to argue, to defend the Lotus, to explain that the Tenno served a purpose greater than themselves, but looking into Bashir's eyes, seeing genuine anger at the exploitation, genuine sadness for the childhood stolen, the words wouldn't come. Perhaps, somewhere deep in the parts of their mind, the void hadn't completely erased. A small voice agreed with him. A chime from the orbiter's communication system interrupted the moment. Ortis's fragmented voice announced. Operator. Incoming transmission from Deep Space 9 OPS. Captain Sisko requests your immediate presence. Friendly summons. There has been a development worrying complication. The operator redressed quickly, Bashir following as they moved to the bridge. Sisko's face appeared on the view screen, expression tense. Wraith, we have a situation. The Corpus prisoners are refusing to cooperate. They keep demanding to speak with their board representatives, which obviously isn't possible. But one of them, a junior technician, asked to speak with you specifically. Says he has information about the spatial tiers that he'll only share with a Tenno. Why would a Corpus crewman want to help me? He claims he has a debt to pay. Something about a colony raid 3 years ago where a Tenno intervened. Sisko's expression was unreadable. Ring any bells? Armin. The operator searched memory. Hundreds of missions. Countless raids. Infinite moments of violence blurring together. Then a fragment surfaced. A Corpus mining operation on Europa. Enslaved colonists. A desperate evacuation under fire. The operator had been running extraction. Pulling civilians to safety while the Corpus fired indiscriminately. One young technician had been caught in crossfire. The operator had pulled him behind cover, saved his life while eliminating his commanders. The technician had whispered thanks before being knocked unconscious by falling debris. I remember. Europa colony, 3 years ago. He survived? Apparently. And he's willing to betray his organization to repay that debt. Odo is bringing him to a private interrogation room. Can you be there in 10 minutes? On my way. Bashir accompanied the operator through DS9's corridors. You saved a Corpus technician's life during a raid? The mission was colony evacuation, not genocide. He wasn't armed. Wasn't a threat. Just someone caught in circumstances beyond his control. The operator paused. The Lotus taught us to discriminate between soldiers and civilians. Between those who chose violence and those swept up in it. Yet the Federation sees the Tenno as weapons. We are weapons. But weapons can choose their targets. They reached the interrogation room where Odo waited outside. His shapeshifter's features set in professional neutrality. Captain Sisko is inside with the prisoner. I should warn you, this one seems genuinely frightened. Not of us. Of what happens when his betrayal becomes known to the Corpus board. The door opened. Inside, Sisko stood near a young Corpus technician who couldn't have been more than 20. His suit bore the insignia of an engineering division specialist, not combat personnel, not high-ranking, just a worker caught in a universe far from home. The technician's eyes widened when he saw the operator. Tenno, you remember Europa? I remember pulling you behind a cargo container while your superiors tried to kill everyone in sight. You saved my life. The board ordered complete liquidation, destroy the colony, eliminate witnesses, maximize profit extraction. You stopped them, killed my captain, extracted the colonists, left me unconscious but alive. The technician's hands shook. I joined the Corpus because I had no choice. Family dead, but I never forgot what you did. You showed mercy when you had no reason to. What do you know about the spatial tiers? The operator asked directly. The technician glanced at Sisko, then back to the operator. The board has known about the dimensional instabilities for months. They've been deliberately destabilizing the barriers between universes. There's a device, a prototype based on corrupted Orokin technology they salvaged from a derelict. It manipulates subspace at quantum levels, creating artificial rifts. Sisko leaned forward. Why would they deliberately create these rifts? For expansion. The origin system is finite, resources depleted, territories claimed, profit margins declining. But other universes represent infinite new markets. Untapped resources. The board sees this as the ultimate profit opportunity. The technician's voice dropped. 1. They don't care that creating these rifts is destabilizing both universes. Don't care that eventually the barriers will collapse completely, mixing realities in catastrophic ways. They only see quarterly earnings. The operator's hands clenched. Where is this device? The frigate you captured was supposed to retrieve it. There's a larger Corpus research station approximately 12 light-years from here, hidden in a nebula to avoid detection. The device is there, along with enough personnel and equipment to establish a permanent dimensional gateway. Dax's voice came through Sisko's combadge. She'd been monitoring the interrogation remotely. Benjamin, if what he's saying is true, we're talking about a threat that could destroy the fabric of space-time in this entire sector. Multiple universes colliding would create a cascade effect. Reality itself would become unstable. Can the device be destroyed? Sisko asked the technician. Maybe. But it's heavily guarded. The board considers it their most valuable asset. They've stationed at least 3 frigates there, plus automated defense systems. And the technician hesitated. There's something else. The research director is Frode Beck. He's brilliant, ruthless, and completely loyal to the profit doctrine. He won't surrender. He'll destroy the station before letting you capture the device intact. The operator knew that name. Frode Beck had been responsible for numerous atrocities across the origin system, weapons development that turned entire colonies into testing grounds, resource extraction that left planets lifeless husks. The Tenno had eliminated his operations multiple times, but the man always escaped, always rebuilt. We need to destroy that station. The operator said. Not so fast. Sisko's command voice cut through the urgency. If this device is destabilizing dimensional barriers, destroying it might make things worse. We need to understand it first. Potentially reverse what's been done. Understanding takes time we don't have. Every day the device operates, the barriers weaken further. More Corpus ships will come through. Eventually, worse things. Which is why we need a surgical strike. Not wholesale destruction. Sisko turned to Odo. Get this technician into protective custody. Full security detail. If the Corpus learn he's cooperating, they'll try to silence him. As Odo led the technician away, Sisko activated a station-wide communication. Senior staff to the wardroom immediately. We have a situation that requires immediate attention. 20 minutes later, the wardroom was full. Sisko at the head of the table. Kira to his right. Dax analyzing data on a PADD. O'Brien reviewing technical specifications. Bashir present in case medical expertise was needed. Odo standing sentinel near the door. And the operator, the only non-Starfleet person in the room, representing a universe that was bleeding into this one. Sisko laid out the situation with military precision. We have a Corpus research station 12 light-years from here operating a device that's tearing holes between universes. This is a clear and present danger to the Federation, to Bajor, to every inhabited system in this sector. We need to neutralize that threat. The Defiant could reach the location in approximately 16 hours at maximum warp, Kira said. Already thinking tactically. But 3 Corpus frigates against 1 Defiant-class ship? That's aggressive odds even with our superior firepower. We don't know if our firepower is superior. O'Brien countered. Wraith's weapons took down 1 frigate easily enough. But we don't know what other technology the Corpus have. They might have weapons that make Dominion Polaron beams look like firecrackers. Then we need intelligence, Dax said. We need to know exactly what we're facing before we commit to assault. All eyes turned to the operator. You know the Corpus, Sisko said. You've fought them. You understand their tactics, their technology, their psychology. If we're going to do this, we need your expertise. The operator felt the weight of responsibility settle like armor. This wasn't a simple elimination mission. This was strategic planning, coordinated assault. The kind of operation that required cooperation between forces that barely understood each other. The Corpus rely on numerical superiority and overwhelming firepower. The operator began. Their individual units are weak, but they compensate through robotics and massed weapon platforms. Their ships have strong frontal shields but vulnerable engine sections. They'll have MOA proxies, robotic units designed for defense throughout the station. Can your ship's weapons penetrate their defenses? Kira asked. Yes. But I can't engage 3 frigates simultaneously while also boarding the station to secure the device. I'd need support. The Defiant will provide that support, Sisko said firmly. We'll draw off the frigates while you infiltrate the station. Locate the device. Determine if it can be safely deactivated or if it needs to be destroyed. Captain, Odo interjected. May I remind you that this station is 12 light years from DS9. If something goes wrong, we'll have no backup, no reinforcements. We'd be completely isolated. I'm aware of the risks, Constable. But the alternative is allowing this situation to escalate until we have Grineer warfleets and worse pouring through dimensional tiers all across the sector. This is our chance to stop it at the source. The operator studied Sisko. The man was preparing to take his ship and crew into hostile territory based on information from a single Corpus defector, partnering with a Tenno he'd known for less than 3 days, facing technology he didn't fully understand. It was either extraordinary courage or reckless optimism, perhaps both. I'll need to prepare, the operator said. Different warframes for different mission phases. Infiltration requires Loki or Ash. Combat requires Rhino or Valkyr. I'll need to plan for multiple contingencies. You'll have 6 hours, Sisko said. We depart at 1,800 hours. Dax, I want continuous analysis of those spatial tear readings. O'Brien, make sure the Defiant is ready for combat, full weapons load, maximum shield power. Kira, your tactical officer. Bashir, prepare for casualties. As the meeting dispersed, Sisko caught the operator's arm. Wraith, before we do this, I need to know, can I trust you to follow orders? This is a coordinated operation. If you go off mission because your Tenno instincts say eliminate everything, you'll endanger the entire team. The operator met his gaze. The Lotus taught me that some missions require scalpels, not hammers. I know the difference. I'll follow your command structure. But if the situation becomes untenable, if the mission fails and the device threatens to activate, then you do what's necessary to protect everyone. Sisko finished. I'm not asking you to sacrifice principles. I'm asking you to trust that we can accomplish this together. Trust. That word again. The concept the Federation seemed to believe could substitute for overwhelming force. I trust you, Captain. You've given me no reason not to. Sisko smiled slightly. Then let's go prevent a dimensional catastrophe, no pressure. As the operator returned to the orbiter to prepare, Ordis greeted them with unusual seriousness, his fragmented personality suppressing its manic elements. Operator, Ordis has been monitoring extensively, analyzing communications between the captured Corpus crew. They've been attempting to send encoded transmissions, clever signals through subspace frequencies. Ordis intercepted efficiently blocked them, but this means the research station may already know their frigate was captured. Which means they'll be expecting retaliation. Good. Let them prepare. Let them concentrate their forces. Makes them easier to find. Operator, you are exhibiting increased aggression, healthy combat readiness. Is this due to the power degradation, unfortunate circumstance, or strategic adaptation, brilliant planning? The operator began selecting warframes from the arsenal, running system checks on each. Neither. It's personal now. The Corpus are threatening these people who showed me there are alternatives to endless war. I won't let the origin system's conflicts destroy what they've built. Ordis observes you are forming attachments, dangerous bonds. This is unprecedented, remarkably human for Tenno operations. Maybe that's not a bad thing. The operator stood in the arsenal, surrounded by warframes that represented years of service, countless missions, infinite moments of violence. Each frame was a tool designed for specific purposes. Each had been used to maintain balance across the origin system. Now they would serve a different purpose. Protecting a fragile piece from the very conflicts that had forged the Tenno in the first place. The irony wasn't lost on the operator. A weapon created by war, defending those who'd chosen peace. Perhaps that was the ultimate balance the Lotus had never quite explained, not merely preventing domination, but proving that those forged in violence could choose protection over destruction. 6 hours until departure. 6 hours to prepare for a mission that would determine whether this galaxy learned from the Origin system's mistakes or repeated them. The Tenno were ready. The question was, would ready be enough? The Defiant cut through space at maximum warp, its compact hull designed for combat rather than comfort. On the bridge, Sisko commanded from the center chair while Kira monitored tactical displays that painted the approaching nebula in swirling false colors. Dax's science station hummed with sensor data, probing ahead for any sign of the Corpus research station. Behind the Defiant, matching its velocity with casual ease, the orbiter maintained formation. Through the Defiant's view screen, the Tenno ship appeared almost organic, its curves and flowing lines a stark contrast to Starfleet's angular functionality. We're approaching the nebula's outer boundary, Dax reported. Sensor interference is increasing. At this rate, we'll be running on visual targeting only within 2 minutes. That's exactly what the Corpus want. The operator's voice came through the communication channel. Nebula interference masks their station, forces attackers into close-range engagement where their numerical advantage matters most. Sisko leaned forward. Wraith, what's your tactical assessment? The station will be positioned near the nebula's densest region, maximum concealment, minimal escape routes. Frigates will patrol the perimeter in standard Corpus formation. Triangular pattern, overlapping fire zones. They'll have deployed proximity mines throughout the approach vectors. Through the channel, the sound of the operator's hands moving across Orokin controls was audible. I'm detecting plasma signatures consistent with Corpus power cores. 3 ships, just as the informant indicated. Bearing 273 Mark V. Kira's tactical console confirmed it. Got them. 3 vessels, each approximately half the Defiant's mass. They're not running silent, they want us to know they're there. Psychological warfare, O'Brien observed from engineering. They're confident in their defensive position. Overconfidence, the operator corrected. The Corpus board prioritizes profit over tactical excellence. They assume technology and numbers compensate for strategic weakness. It's why the Tenno have been eliminating their operations for years. Sisko stood, circling to the tactical station. Then we use that overconfidence. Wraith, can your ship penetrate the nebula's densest region while cloaked? The orbiter doesn't have cloaking technology in the way you understand it. But Loki's Warframe abilities include invisibility, bending light around a localized field. If I transfer into Loki and use the Archwing to approach the station directly, I can bypass the frigates entirely. You'd be completely unsupported, Kira protested. If something goes wrong, then I adapt. It's what Tenno do. The operator's voice carried certainty born from years of solo operations. Captain Sisko, I recommend the Defiant engage the frigates directly, draw their attention, force them to commit their firepower. While they're focused on you, I'll infiltrate the station, locate the dimensional device, and determine deactivation protocols. And if it can't be deactivated safely, a pause. Then, I'll ensure it can't be used. One way or another. Sisko exchanged glances with his senior staff. The plan was risky, splitting their already minimal forces. Relying on a teenager with extraordinary abilities but whose power was literally degrading by the day. Every tactical instinct said to keep forces concentrated, maintain mutual support, but conventional tactics wouldn't work here. The Corpus understood conventional warfare. They'd prepared for it. What they hadn't prepared for was the Tenno's unique approach: infiltration over confrontation, precision over power. All right. We do this your way. But Wraith, Sisko's voice carried the weight of command and concern. You get in trouble, you call for extraction immediately. No heroics. No sacrificing yourself to complete the mission. We extract together or not at all. Understood? Understood. Captain. The Defiant dropped out of warp at the nebula's edge. Immediately, Corpus sensors locked on. The 3 frigates broke formation, angling toward the Starfleet vessel with weapons charging. Their hulls gleamed white and blue even through the nebula's interference, pristine corporate aesthetics masking predatory intent. They're hailing us, Kira reported. Audio only. Put it through. The voice that emerged from the speakers carried the distinctive Corpus accent, every syllable calculated for maximum efficiency. Unidentified Starfleet vessel. You are trespassing in Corpus claimed territory. Withdraw immediately or face liquidation. This is your only warning. Sisko's smile was cold. This is Captain Benjamin Sisko of the Federation Starship Defiant. You're operating illegal technology that threatens this entire sector. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Or we will use force. Laughter, genuine amusement. Starfleet. Always so predictable. Always believing your moral authority means anything beyond your borders. Very well, Captain, let me demonstrate what happens when primitive civilizations challenge Corpus interests. The channel cut. Immediately, all 3 frigates open fire. Plasma bolts superheated coherent energy lanced through space. The Defiant's shields flared, absorbing impacts that would have vaporized lesser vessels. Return fire. Sisko commanded. Quantum torpedoes, full spread, target the lead frigate's engines. The Defiant's weapons spoke with devastating precision. Torpedoes streaked through the nebula, their targeting systems compensating for interference. 2 struck the lead frigate's shields, creating cascading explosions of blue-white energy. The 3rd torpedo found its mark: shield penetration, direct hit on the engine section. The frigate listed, thrusters failing, but the other 2 maintained their assault. Plasma fire intensifying, shields at 70%. O'Brien reported. Their weapons are more powerful than projected. Some kind of enhanced plasma acceleration we haven't seen before. Behind the Defiant, unnoticed in the chaos of combat, the Orbiter launched a single figure. Loki's Warframe, slender and precise, activated its invisibility field and fired archwing thrusters at maximum burn. The Tenno crossed the battlefield like a ghost, weaving between plasma bolts and torpedo explosions with movements too fluid for conscious thought. Through transference, the operator experienced combat as abstract geometry trajectories, intercept vectors, optimal paths through probability spaces. The Lotus had drilled these calculations until they became instinct. Now, piloting Loki through a war zone, that training kept them alive. The Corpus station materialized through the nebula, a massive structure anchored to an asteroid, its architecture reflecting the board's obsession with efficiency. Multiple docking bays, sensor arrays, weapon platforms. At the station's core, visible through reinforced viewports, a device pulsed with energies that made the operator's void touch senses scream warning. The dimensional rift generator, the source of the tears between universes. Loki approached an auxiliary airlock maintenance access, minimally guarded. The Warframe's enhanced sensors detected automated defenses, proximity mines, laser grids, pressure plates, standard Corpus security that the Tenno had bypassed thousands of times. A thrown kunai disrupted the mine's sensor. Loki slipped through the laser grid with millimeter precision. The airlock cycled, and the Warframe entered the station. Inside, Corpus MOA proxies patrolled corridors in predictable patterns. These weren't the intelligent, adaptive units the Grineer employed, merely automated security following predetermined routes. Loki's invisibility rendered them irrelevant. The operator moved deeper, following internal schematics that all Corpus stations shared. Central core, research level, maximum security zone. The dimensional device would be there. On the Defiance bridge, the battle was escalating. The crippled frigate had retreated, but the remaining 2 had coordinated their assault. Plasma fire came from multiple angles, forcing the Defiant into defensive maneuvers that limited return fire effectiveness. Shields at 40%. O'Brien called out. We can't sustain this much longer. Evasive pattern Beta 7. Sisko ordered. Target the ventral section of the starboard frigate. Kira, I need a solution that doesn't involve us getting vaporized. Working on it. Kira's hands flew across tactical controls. Their shield frequencies are rotating. I can't get a clean penetration weight. There's a pattern. Every 17 seconds, a microsecond gap in the shield harmonics. If we time our torpedoes perfectly. Do it. The Defiant rolled, presenting minimal profile while Kira calculated firing solutions with computer-assisted precision. The moment arrived that microsecond vulnerability. Quantum torpedoes launched, threading through the shield gap, impacting the frigate's hull directly. Explosions blossomed across the Corpus vessel. Secondary detonations as plasma conduits ruptured. The frigate spun out of control. Life support failing. Crew evacuating in escape pods that scattered through the nebula. 1 frigate remained. But it was the command vessel, larger, better armed, commanded by someone competent enough to recognize losing odds. They're charging weapons, Dax reported. Energy signature is increasing exponentially. Benjamin, I think they're preparing some kind of self-destruct. If that ship explodes while carrying that much plasma, it'll trigger a chain reaction through the entire nebula. Everyone within 10,000 kilometers dies. Sisko's mind raced through options, each worse than the last. Hail them, maybe we can. The channel opened before he finished. Frode Beck's face appeared on the view screen, a human male in elaborate Corpus administrative robes, expression twisted with calculated fury. Captain Sisko, congratulations on destroying 2 of my vessels. A Pyrrhic victory. I assure you. You've cost the Corpus board approximately 600 million credits in hardware. That's a debt that must be repaid. Stand down, Beck. You've lost. Surrender and we'll negotiate terms. Negotiate? Beck laughed. The Corpus don't negotiate from positions of weakness, but we do ensure our investments yield returns. This nebula contains enough volatile gases to create a detonation equivalent to several photon torpedoes. My ship's destruction will trigger the detonation. You'll die. Your ship will die, and the research station, his smile was venomous, will be vaporized along with whatever Tenno infiltrator you sent aboard. A costly solution, but profit margins sometimes require drastic overhead reduction. Sisko's blood ran cold. You'd kill your own people? Everyone on that station? Acceptable losses in service of the greater profit doctrine. Besides, the dimensional device's data has been transmitted to the board. We can rebuild. You cannot resurrect the dead. Beck's hand moved toward a control panel. Goodbye, Captain. Please note your destruction will be itemized and billed to the Federation. Inside the research station, the operator had reached the central laboratory. Through Loki's optical sensors, they observed the dimensional device, a nightmare fusion of Orokin aesthetics and Corpus engineering. Crystalline matrices channeled exotic energies through pathways that hurt to look at directly. The device pulsed with power that the operator's void touch senses recognized. Reality being torn. Barriers between universes forcibly shredded. Around the device, Corpus scientists worked frantically, evacuating data while MOA proxies established defensive perimeters. They knew someone was coming. They just didn't know the Tenno was already here. Loki's invisibility field flickered power degradation. The dimensional barrier taking its toll. The operator had seconds before full visibility returned. They dropped the field entirely, channeling remaining energy into speed. Loki became a blur, crossing the laboratory in movements too fast for human perception. Kunai thrown with perfect precision disabled MOA proxies before their targeting systems registered threat. The scientists barely had time to scream before neural strikes rendered them unconscious. 30 seconds. 12 hostiles neutralized. 0 casualties. The operator stood before the dimensional device, analyzing its construction with knowledge inherited from fighting Corpus technology for years. The device's core was Orokin, that much was obvious. The crystalline matrix patterns matched void key technology. But the Corpus had corrupted it. Forced it to purposes the Orokin never intended. Creating dimensional tiers wasn't exploration. It was violation. Ordis, I'm transmitting device specifications. Can you determine safe deactivation protocols? Analyzing panicking operator. This technology is extremely unstable, incredibly dangerous. Deactivation would require precise calibration, impossible accuracy of energy discharge rates. One miscalculation, and the accumulated dimensional stress releases catastrophically. Everyone dies. Define catastrophically. Complete spatial collapse. Tiny problem within a 50,000 kilometer radius. The station, the Defiant, the nebula, everything ceased to exist. Minor inconvenience. The operator's mind raced. Beck wouldn't have built a device he couldn't control. There had to be safety protocols, emergency shutdown procedures. The Corpus worshipped profit, but they weren't suicidal. They'd want to preserve their investment. Unless Beck was desperate enough to sacrifice the station entirely. Through the station's communication system, Beck's voice echoed. All personnel, initiate emergency evacuation. This station will self-destruct in 5 minutes. Repeat. 5 minutes to evacuation. The operator felt everything click into place. Beck wasn't bluffing. The man would destroy the station, kill everyone aboard, eliminate evidence rather than let the Federation capture intact Corpus technology. 4 minutes, 50 seconds until detonation. Until the dimensional device's accumulated energy released uncontrolled, tearing a hole in reality that would consume everything nearby. The operator activated comms. Captain Sisko, the station is set to self-destruct. Less than 5 minutes. You need to withdraw immediately. Sisko's voice came through, strained by combat. We can't withdraw. Beck's threatening to detonate his frigate if we retreat. Chain reaction would destroy you along with the station. Then we have a problem. Because if I don't disable this device properly, its detonation creates a dimensional collapse that kills everyone anyway. A pause. Then Sisko's command voice, calm despite the chaos, can you disable it? Maybe. But it requires precision I'm not sure I can maintain. My connection to this warframe is degrading. I'm operating at maybe 70% efficiency. One mistake, then don't make mistakes. You're Tenno. This is what you do. The operator almost smiled. Sisko had absorbed the lesson. Sometimes trust meant believing people could accomplish the impossible because they'd already done it hundreds of times before. Ordis, route all remaining void energy to Loki's fine motor control. I need maximum precision for the next 4 minutes. Compliance terrified obedience. Operator. This will completely drain wisely conserve our void reserves. After this, transference may be impossible temporarily unavailable for several hours. After this, we're either alive to worry about it or dead and past caring. The operator's hands transmitted through transference into Loki's mechanically perfect fingers began the delicate work of disarming a device designed by one empire's hubris and weaponized by another empire's greed. Outside, the Defiant and the Corpus Command frigate circled each other like ancient predators, each waiting for the other to make a fatal mistake. Inside the station, Corpus personnel fled toward evacuation shuttles while countdown timers measured their remaining lives in seconds. And in the laboratory, a teenage Tenno child soldier, dimensional refugee, weapon learning to be more than its purpose worked to save a galaxy from mistakes made by civilizations that thought themselves gods. The countdown reached 3 minutes. The real battle had just begun. The operator's consciousness, stretched across dimensional barriers through failing transference, guided Loki's hands with precision that bordered on precognition. Each crystalline node in the dimensional device connected to energy pathways that pulsed with forces drawn from between universes. Touching the wrong sequence would trigger immediate catastrophic failure. Hesitating too long would allow the countdown to complete. 2 minutes. 40 seconds. Ordis. I need real-time analysis of energy discharge patterns. Which nodes can be safely disconnected without cascading failure? Calculating desperately processing. Operator. The Orokin crystal matrix follows Fibonacci spiral pattern elegant mathematics, but the corpus have corrupted stupidly modified the harmonic resonance. Disconnection sequence must follow inverse pattern counterintuitive approach starting from outer nodes and spiraling inward. Loki's fingers moved to the outermost crystal node. The operator could feel the energy thrumming through it reality warping power that the void touched part of their consciousness recognized as kindred but wrong, like looking into a mirror and seeing your reflection screaming. They disconnected the first node. The device's pulse stuttered. Energy redistributing through remaining pathways. Warning klaxons blared through the laboratory. 2 minutes, 15 seconds. On the Defiance Bridge, Dax's science station erupted in frantic alerts. Benjamin, the station's energy output just spiked dramatically. Whatever Wraith is doing, it's destabilizing the device. Can they contain it? Cisco demanded. Maneuvering the Defiant to keep Beck's frigate in firing solution while avoiding the plasma barrages still hammering their shields. I don't know. The dimensional stress readings are off the scale. If containment fails, then we better make sure Wraith succeeds. Cisco opened a channel. Wraith? Talk to me. What's your status? One a Wraith Cisco opened said. The operator's voice came through strained, each word an effort as transference degraded further. Device is more unstable than anticipated. Each disconnection increases pressure on remaining nodes. It's like diffusing a bomb where every cut wire makes the others more volatile. Can you do it? Ask me in 90 seconds. 1 minute. 52 seconds. Frode Beck's face appeared on a monitor inside the laboratory. His expression showing calculation rather than fear. Tenno. I wondered if you'd make it this far. Impressive. But ultimately futile. Even if you disable the device. Even if you survive the station's destruction. You're still trapped in this universe. Your void connection is failing. I can see it in your frame's energy signature. How long before you're just another lost child with delusions of warrior grandeur? The operator ignored him, focusing on the next node. Disconnect. Energy redistribution. The device's pulse grew more erratic. 1 minute. 30 seconds. You know what's amusing? Beck continued. His voice carrying pedagogical pleasure. The Orokin built this technology to explore dimensional boundaries peacefully. They wanted knowledge. Understanding. But we Corpus recognized its true potential weaponization. Exploitation. Why explore when you can conquer? Why understand when you can dominate? Another node disconnected. Loki's hands were steady, but the operator could feel their own body aboard the orbiter muscles spasming from transference strain, neural pathways burning with feedback. 1 minute. 8 seconds. That's what separates our philosophies, Tenno. You maintain balance, we maximize profit, you protect. We exploit. And in the end, Beck smiled. Profit always wins. Because those who hesitate, who show mercy, who believe in honor, they die poor and forgotten. The operator's voice was quiet. Focused entirely on the device. The Orokin believed that too. They believed their immortality and power made them untouchable. Then the Tenno showed them what happens when you exploit children and call it necessity. 53 seconds. We slaughtered them. Every last one. Not for profit. Not for balance. For justice. Another node disconnected. The device's pulse was becoming chaotic, containment field straining. You're making the same mistake they did, Frodbeck. Assuming the weapon you created won't turn on you. 41 seconds. Beck's smile faltered. You're bluffing. You won't complete the disconnection in time. Maybe. But you won't live to collect on that bet. On the Defiant, Sisko made a command decision. Dax, can you transport Wraith out if necessary? Not while they're in transference. The connection creates quantum entanglement between their consciousness and the Warframe. Transporting one without the other would sever the link catastrophically. Then we give them every second we can. Sisko turned to Kira. Target Beck's frigate. All weapons. Disable their self-destruct capability before they can trigger it. Captain. At this range. We'll be caught in the explosion if we do it. The Defiant unleashed everything. Quantum torpedoes, phaser arrays, even the experimental pulse cannons designed for Dominion engagements. The barrage was overwhelming, desperate, the kind of attack that left no reserves for retreat. Beck's frigate shields collapsed under the onslaught. Plasma conduits ruptured. But the Corpus commander's hand was already moving toward the self-destruct authorization. 29 seconds. Inside the laboratory, the operator was down to the final 3 nodes. These were the core connections, the primary channels through which dimensional energy flowed. Disconnecting them in wrong order would be like opening an airlock into deep space. Everything gets pulled through, violently and terminally. Ortis, I need the exact sequence. No margin for error. Triangulating, praying to Orokin gods. Central node first, then simultaneously terrifyingly precise both outer nodes within 0.03 seconds of each other. Operator, your reaction time at current transference degradation may be insufficient, barely adequate. 17 seconds. Beck's hand touched the self-destruct control. His frigate's reactor began overload sequence. On the Defiant, O'Brien's engineering console screamed warnings about imminent plasma detonation. Captain! O'Brien shouted. Beck's triggered it. Reactor detonation in 15 seconds. We need to get clear now. Helm, full reverse. Sisko commanded. But even at maximum impulse, the Defiant couldn't achieve safe distance in time. The nebula's volatile gases would propagate the explosion, creating a wave front that would overtake them in seconds. 12 seconds until station self-destruct. 15 seconds until frigate detonation. The operator's hands moved to the final 3 nodes. Everything slowed transference, creating a state of hyperfocus where milliseconds stretched into subjective eternities. They could feel their real body aboard the orbiter convulsing. Neural tissue literally burning from the strain. Dax had warned about permanent dissociation. The operator was seconds from that threshold. But these people, Sisko, Dax, O'Brien, Kira, even Bashir and Odo, had shown them alternatives to the Origin system's endless conflict, had demonstrated that trust and cooperation could achieve what force alone couldn't, had treated a child soldier as a person worth saving rather than a weapon to be deployed. The operator owed them this. Owed them everything. 8 seconds. Fingers touched the central node. Disconnected it cleanly. Energy screamed through remaining pathways. Pressure building to critical levels. 6 seconds. Both hands moved to the outer nodes simultaneously. The operator felt transference fraying, their consciousness stretching too thin across dimensional barriers that were actively collapsing around the destabilizing device. 4 seconds. Disconnect. Both nodes. Perfect synchronization within 0.027 seconds of each other. The dimensional device's pulse stopped. Energy that had been building toward catastrophic release suddenly had nowhere to go. Containment fields held. The device went dormant, crystal matrices darkening as exotic energies dissipated harmlessly into subspace. 2 seconds until station self-destruct. Ortis. Emergency abort station countdown. Override code. Authorization Tenno 7 Omega. The operator was gambling everything on a hope that Corpus stations, like all Corpus technology, had emergency overrides designed to protect corporate assets, that the authorization codes they'd captured from dozens of raids might work here. 1 second. The countdown stopped at 01. Emergency lighting replaced klaxons. The station's automated voice announced in flat tones, self-destruct sequence aborted. Authorization, Tenno override accepted. All systems entering safe mode. Somachi. Aboard the Defiant, Dax's science station showed the dimensional device going dormant. Benjamin. The device is offline. Dimensional stress readings are dropping to safe levels. But O'Brien's warning still blared. Beck's frigate is still critical. Reactor detonation in 8 seconds. Through failing transference, the operator made one final decision. They channeled every remaining fragment of void energy, the power that had barely been sufficient to disarm the device, into Loki's systems. The Warframe shields extended. magnified, projected outward in a barrier that had no business existing in normal physics. A bubble of void energy reality warping force drawn from the dimension that had transformed children into weapons surrounded Beck's frigate. 4 seconds. What is that? Kira shouted, staring at sensor readings that made no sense. Some kind of containment field? Nothing generates that kind of energy signature. The Corpus frigate's reactor reached critical mass. Detonation occurred, a miniature star born in an instant, plasma temperatures sufficient to vaporize everything within 1,000 kilometers. The void barrier contained it. For 3 impossible seconds, the explosion was trapped inside the operator's projected field. Matter and energy screamed against containment that shouldn't exist, couldn't exist by any law of physics the Federation understood. Then the barrier failed. But not catastrophically. The operator released the containment in a controlled vector, directing the explosion's force away from the Defiant, away from DS9, out into deep space where nothing existed to be harmed. The shockwave still hit the Defiant, but attenuated a hard push instead of an obliterating strike. Shields held. The ship was thrown backward but intact. Crew shaken but alive. Inside the Corpus laboratory, Loki collapsed. Transference severed completely. The operator's consciousness snapped back to their body aboard the orbiter with traumatic violence. They screamed, raw sound torn from a throat that had been silent throughout the operation. Pain like nothing the Zariman incident had prepared them for lanced through every nerve. Operator. Ortis's voice was pure panic, fragmentation abandoned in crisis. Vital signs critical, neural pathways showing massive trauma. Medical systems activating. Operator, stay conscious. Don't you dare leave Ortis alone in this strange galaxy. But consciousness was a luxury the operator could no longer afford. Darkness pulled them down like gravity. Like the void's embrace. Like the sleep they'd been denied since learning to become a weapon. They fell. On the Defiance bridge, Cisco was already issuing orders. Damage report. Casualty status. Shields at 12%, but holding. O'Brien reported. Minor injuries across all decks. No fatalities. Captain, we shouldn't have survived that. Someone contained the explosion long enough to direct it away from us. Wraith, Dax said quietly. It was Wraith. They used their void energy to contain the detonation. But Benjamin, her voice caught. The energy readings from their ship just dropped to almost nothing. I'm reading one human life sign, but it's weak. Very weak. Cisco was moving before his conscious mind finished processing. Bashir, meet me in Transporter Bay 1, Dax, lock onto Wraith and beam them directly to the infirmary. O'Brien. I need an engineering team on that station immediately. Secure the dimensional device before anyone else tries to use it. Kira, coordinate with the Bajoran militia. We'll need a permanent security detachment here until we can properly understand the technology. Captain, Kira said. What about the Corpus personnel? The ones who evacuated? Round them up. Anyone who worked on that device is a material witness. They're not going home until we understand exactly what they've done to the dimensional barriers. In the orbiter's medical bay, the operator lay motionless, chest barely rising with shallow breaths. Ortis's medical systems worked frantically, but the damage was beyond automated protocols. Neural tissue didn't just strain, it burned. Synaptic connections didn't just weaken, they severed. The price of pushing transference beyond its limits, of maintaining consciousness across dimensional barriers while reality itself fought against their existence. The price of being a weapon used once too often. When Bashir materialized in the orbiter's medical bay, Cisco had insisted on treating the operator in their own environment rather than risk transport to DS9. His medical tricorder immediately screamed warnings. Severe neural trauma, Bashir said. Hands already moving with practiced efficiency. Synaptic cascade. Approaching total failure. It's like they burned their brain out from the inside. He looked at Cisco with grave expression. Captain, I don't know if I can save them. This is beyond anything in my experience. Then you'll learn, Cisco said firmly. Because we're not losing them. Not after what they just sacrificed. In the darkness behind consciousness, the operator drifted. Not quite dreaming. Not quite dying. Somewhere between, where the void had always existed, where children went when reality became too terrible to bear. But even in that darkness, they felt something. Warmth, pressure, someone holding their hand. Stay with us, Wraith, Cisco's voice, distant but determined. You saved us all. Now let us save you. The operator wanted to respond. Wanted to say that Tenno didn't need saving. That weapons didn't require compassion. That they'd only done what the mission required. But the words wouldn't come. Only darkness. Only the void's familiar embrace. And the fading hope that when they woke, if they woke, there would be more to their existence than the next target, the next mission, the next moment of violence in an endless war. That hope. Fragile and uncertain. was the last thing they felt before the darkness completed its claim. Consciousness returned in fragments, sensory impressions assembling slowly like a puzzle with missing pieces. Soft light filtering through closed eyelids. The hum of medical equipment, voices speaking in careful, measured tones. And pain, distant but persistent. Like echoes of a scream that had finally exhausted itself. The operator's eyes opened to an unfamiliar ceiling. Not the orbiter's organic curves. Not a Warframe's optical sensors, just standard Federation medical bay architecture, functional, sterile, designed for healing rather than combat. Easy. Doctor. Bashir's face appeared in their field of vision, concern etched in every line. Don't try to move yet. You've been unconscious for 3 days. Your neural pathways were severely damaged. I've done everything I can, but full recovery will take time. The device? The operator's voice was raw, barely above a whisper. Disabled. Secured. O'Brien and a team of engineers have been studying it under strict containment protocols. Whatever you did worked. The dimensional tiers have stopped expanding. The barriers between universes are beginning to restabilize. Bashir adjusted something on a medical console. You saved a lot of lives. Wraith. More than you probably realize. The operator tried to sit up. Pain lanced through their skull, forcing them back down. Transference. Bashir's expression grew grave. That's the complicated part. You pushed your abilities far beyond safe limits. The neural pathways that enable your consciousness transfer suffered massive trauma. I've repaired what I could, but... He paused, choosing words carefully. You won't be able to use transference for at least 2 months. Maybe longer. Your brain needs time to heal, to rebuild the connections that were burned away. 2 months. The operator felt something cold settle in their chest. Without transference, they were just a teenager. No Warframe strength. No enhanced abilities. No way to be what the Lotus had made them. Just human. Fragile. Vulnerable. Weak. The Corpus prisoners? The operator asked, deflecting from the implications of their condition. In custody. Most have been cooperative once they realized the alternative was being charged with crimes against the Federation. The station's research data has been seized. And Frodbeck Bashir's expression darkened. He didn't survive. When his frigate's reactor detonated, even your void containment couldn't protect everyone aboard. His crew evacuated, but Beck stayed on the bridge trying to ensure maximum damage. His choice. The operator felt nothing at that news. Beck had been an enemy, a threat to be neutralized. That he died by his own weapons seemed appropriate. The origin system had taught them that sometimes problems eliminated themselves. The door to the medical bay opened. Captain Sisko entered. Followed by Dax and O'Brien. All three looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from days of crisis management and difficult decisions. You're awake, Sisko said, relief evident. Welcome back. You gave us quite a scare. Gave yourself quite a scare too, Dax added, pulling up a chair beside the biobed. What you did containing that explosion with void energy, it shouldn't have been possible. You held forces equivalent to a small star inside a projection field for 3 full seconds. The energy requirements alone. I did what was necessary. The operator interrupted. The mission required it. Sisko's expression shifted to something the operator had seen before, the look adults gave when they were about to say something you didn't want to hear but needed to. Wraith, we need to talk about what happens next. You're injured. Your abilities are offline for the foreseeable future. You're stranded in our universe with no clear way home. And he paused. You're 15 years old. Maybe 16. Either way, you're a minor by Federation standards. A minor without guardian. Without support system. Without any legal standing in our society. The operator's jaw tightened. I know what you're going to say. Sisko interrupted gently. That you don't need help. That you've been taking care of yourself. That you're a weapon. Not a child requiring protection. But here's the thing, Wraith and the Federation, we don't leave children without support, no matter how capable they are. I'm Tenno. That makes me different. It makes you a traumatized teenager with extraordinary abilities and zero framework for normal life, Bashir said bluntly. I've reviewed your medical history, what Ortis was able to provide. The Zariman incident. The void exposure. Years of combat operations with minimal downtime. You've never had a childhood. You've never had the chance to be anything except a weapon. The operator wanted to argue. Wanted to explain that the Lotus had given them purpose, that the Tenno served a role greater than individual happiness, that balance required sacrifice. But lying in a medical bed, unable to access the warframes that had defined their existence, the arguments felt hollow. What was a Tenno without transference? What was a weapon that couldn't be wielded? What are you suggesting? The operator asked quietly. Sisko exchanged glances with Dax before responding. I'm suggesting you stay on Deep Space Nine. Temporarily. At least. While you recover, while we work on finding a way to stabilize your void connection or potentially return you to your universe. But also, he leaned forward, because you need time to figure out who you are beyond being Tenno. To discover what kind of person you want to be when you have choices instead of missions. I have my ship. Ortis can care for me. Ortis is an AI dealing with its own fragmentation issues. Dax said gently. A support system? Yes. But not a guardian. Not someone who can help you process trauma or teach you how to exist in peaceful society. I don't know how to exist in peaceful society. The operator admitted, the words escaping before they could be stopped. Everything I know is about combat. Tactics. Eliminating threats. Maintaining balance through controlled violence. I don't know how to. They gestured helplessly. Be normal. Then learn, Sisko said simply. Stay here, let people help you. Attend school if you want. We have excellent educational facilities for the children of Starfleet personnel and Bajoran civilians. Or don't. Just. Without missions. Without targets. Without constantly preparing for the next fight. The concept felt alien. Terrifying. The Lotus had always provided structure, mission parameters, tactical objectives, clear definitions of success and failure. Without that framework, what did existence even mean? I'll think about it, the operator said finally. That's all we ask. Sisko stood. In the meantime, you're cleared for light duty once Bashir approves. We could use your expertise analyzing the Corpus technology. Understanding their systems might help us strengthen the dimensional barriers, prevent future incursions. After they left, the operator lay in silence, staring at the ceiling. 3 days unconscious. 2 months minimum without transference. Stranded in a universe that operated on principles completely foreign to the Origin system's endless conflict. The door opened again. The operator expected Bashir with more medical updates. Instead, a Bajoran woman entered middle-aged, wearing civilian clothes, carrying a data PADD and an expression of professional warmth. Hello, Wraith. I'm Keiko O'Brien, Chief O'Brien's wife. I run the school here on DS9. Captain Sisko asked me to stop by, talk to you about educational opportunities. She pulled up a chair, settling in with the ease of someone accustomed to working with reluctant students. I understand you've had an unusual upbringing. Limited formal education. Extensive practical training in specialized skills. I can read tactical schematics in 7 languages. The operator said. Calculate orbital insertion trajectories. Identify 300 weapon types by sound alone. Not sure any of that qualifies as education by your standards. Keiko smiled. Actually, that's incredibly impressive. But education isn't just about practical skills. It's about understanding history, philosophy, art, science, the accumulated knowledge of civilizations. It's about learning to think critically, to question assumptions, to grow beyond what you were taught. The Lotus taught me everything I needed. The Lotus taught you how to be a weapon. I'm offering to teach you how to be a person. Keiko's expression softened. I've worked with children from all kinds of backgrounds, refugees, orphans, kids who've seen terrible things. You're not the first student I've encountered who believes their only value lies in combat capability, but you are the first who has a chance to rewrite that narrative while still young enough to build something new. The operator considered this. What would I even study? Whatever interests you. Federation history. If you want to understand this society. Astrophysics. If you want to comprehend the forces that brought you here. Literature. If you want to explore how other cultures process trauma and conflict. Or Keiko leaned forward conspiratorially. You could start with something simple. Jake Sisko runs a writing workshop for young people on the station. You've lived through experiences most people can't imagine. Writing about them might help process what you've been through. The Tenno don't process. We adapt and continue. And how's that working out for you? The question hung in the air. The operator had no answer, because the truth was, adaptation without processing had left them what? Functional but hollow. Capable but disconnected. Alive but not truly living. I'll consider it, the operator said finally. Keiko stood, leaving the pad on the table beside the biobed. The school schedule is on there. Classes start at 0800, but students can join any time. No pressure. Just think about it. You've spent your whole life fighting. Maybe it's time to learn what you were fighting for. After she left, the operator picked up the pad. The course listings seemed simultaneously mundane and impossibly exotic. Federation Civics, Comparative Xenobiology, Introduction to Poetry, Applied Mathematics, Bajoran History and Culture. Poetry. The operator almost laughed. What would the Lotus think, seeing her warrior studying poetry? But the Lotus wasn't here. And the operator was beginning to suspect that whoever the Lotus had been, whatever her true motivations, she had been preparing the Tenno for a specific role, not for life itself. Days passed. Bashir cleared the operator for light activity with strict instructions about avoiding neural strain. The operator spent time aboard the orbiter, reassuring Ortis, checking on the warframes that stood silent in the arsenal like abandoned statues. Without transference. They were just machinery. Beautiful. Deadly. But empty. The operator also spent time on DS9's promenade. Observing life in ways impossible during mission operations. Watching Bajoran merchants haggle prices with Ferengi traders. Seeing Starfleet officers share meals with alien colleagues from a dozen species. Noticing children, actual children, not soldiers, running and playing without fear of imminent violence. On the third day of observation, someone sat beside the operator at the upper-level railing. Major Kira, still in uniform, holding 2 cups of what smelled like Bajoran tea. "Thought you might want company," Kira said, offering 1 cup. Watching life happen can be lonely when you're not part of it. The operator accepted the tea. "I don't know how to be part of it. Everything I know is about being separate. Above. The weapon deployed when needed. Then withdrawn until the next crisis. The Tenno philosophy? The survival philosophy. If you're part of something, you can lose it. If you care about people, they become vulnerabilities. If you form attachments, they can be used against you." Kira's expression held understanding that came from personal experience. "I spent years in the Bajoran resistance. Fighting Cardassian occupation. We told ourselves similar things, that emotional distance was necessary, that caring too much made you weak, that warriors couldn't afford attachments. And you know what we discovered? What? That isolation is its own kind of death. That fighting without connection to something beyond survival makes you just like your enemies. That the whole point of resistance was protecting the ability to love, to build, to exist as more than just soldiers." Kira sipped her tea. "The war ended. The Cardassians withdrew. And suddenly we resistance fighters had to learn how to be Bajoran again. How to be people instead of weapons. It was harder than any battle. Did you succeed?" "Still working on it." Kira smiled slightly. "But I'm trying. And that's what matters. Trying to be more than what war made us." The operator watched the promenade below. Quark's bar was doing brisk business. Children laughed near the replimat. An elderly Bajoran couple walked hand in hand. Probably telling stories about lives lived before occupation. Captain Sisko said I should stay. Learn to exist without missions. "Are you going to?" The operator was silent for a long moment. Then, the Corpus captain said something before he died. "That prophet always wins because those who hesitate, who show mercy, who believe in honor, die poor and forgotten. And yet Beck died while you survived." Kira observed. "Funny how that worked out. He was wrong. That's what I realized. Lying in that medical bay. The origin system taught me that force and isolation were strength. That caring was weakness. That balance required staying separate from the thing being balanced." The operator's hands tightened around the teacup. "But Captain Sisko achieved more through cooperation than I could have through pure force. Dr. Bashir saved my life not because I was useful but because he believes every person deserves saving. You're telling me that resistance matters because of what it protects, not just what it destroys. Sounds like you're learning already." "I'm trying." The operator smiled slightly, a rare expression. "Still working on it, but I'm trying." Kira stood, placing a hand on the operator's shoulder. "That's all anyone can ask. Welcome to Deep Space Nine. Wraith. Try not to blow anything up for at least a few weeks." Circumvented. That evening, the operator attended their first class at Keiko's school. Introduction to Federation History, taught by Keiko herself to a mixed group of human, Bajoran, and alien children ranging from 8 to 17. The operator sat in the back, listening to lessons about the Federation's founding, about how multiple species overcame centuries of conflict to build something cooperative. It felt simultaneously naive and revolutionary. The origin system had never achieved such peace. The closest equivalent was the Tenno enforcing balance through threat rather than building genuine cooperation. During a break, a young Bajoran girl approached. Maybe 13, wearing the traditional earring that denoted faith in the prophets. "You're the Tenno, right? The one who stopped the Corpus from destroying the station?" The operator nodded cautiously. "Thank you." The girl's smile was genuine, uncomplicated by tactical assessment or threat evaluation. "My father works in engineering. He was on the team analyzing the dimensional device. He said if you hadn't disabled it, everyone would have died. So, thank you, for saving us." She walked away before the operator could respond. But the words remained, settling into places the operator hadn't known were empty. Thank you. For saving us. Not mission accomplished. Not target eliminated. Not balance maintained. Just simple gratitude for preserving life. The operator realized, sitting in that classroom, surrounded by children learning about cooperation and peace, that perhaps this was what the Lotus had really been preparing them for. Not endless war. Not perfect balance through controlled violence. But the wisdom to know when to fight and when to build. When to be a weapon and when to be a person. When to maintain distance and when to risk connection. Balance, true balance, required both. Weeks passed. The operator still called Wraith by most, though a few students had started using their first name once they'd shared it settled into a routine that would have seemed impossible a month earlier. Classes in the morning, afternoons consulting with O'Brien and Dax on Corpus technology, helping strengthen dimensional barriers, evenings sometimes spent at Jake Sisko's writing workshop, where they'd begun documenting the Zeriman incident in prose that was more therapy than literature. Dr. Bashir provided regular neural scans. The damage was healing slowly but consistently. Transference remained offline. But the prognosis improved each week. The operator discovered talents unrelated to combat. They had a gift for xenolinguistics, those 7 languages Keiko had mentioned translated well into academic study. They understood physics at an intuitive level that made Dax's eyes light up with scientific excitement. And they wrote with raw honesty that made Jake Sisko nod appreciatively, recognizing authentic voice when he read it. 2 months after the Corpus incident, Captain Sisko called the operator to his office. Dax was present, along with a figure the operator recognized immediately, a Vulcan in Starfleet Science uniform. Wraith, this is Commander Tavrel from Starfleet Science Division. She's been studying the Prophet's relationship with dimensional physics. She believes she's found a way to stabilize your void connection. Tavrel inclined her head in Vulcan greeting. Fascinating biology. Your void touched physiology. The Prophets exist in nonlinear time, perceiving past and future simultaneously. Your void energy operates on similar principles, accessing states that exist across dimensional boundaries. By modulating your neural patterns to align with the Prophet's temporal existence, we may restore transference capability permanently. Is it safe? The operator asked. Define safe. The procedure carries risks. But Dr. Bashir and I have developed protocols that minimize danger. Success probability is approximately 73.6%. The operator looked at Sisko. And if I choose not to undergo the procedure? Sisko's expression was carefully neutral. Then you remain as you are. Human. Without Warframe access. But still welcome here on DS9 for as long as you wish. The choice was clear. Restore transference, regain the abilities that define the Tenno, return to being the weapon, or remain human, vulnerable, but also free to continue becoming whatever they chose. The operator thought about Keiko's classes. About Jake's writing workshop. About conversations with Kira about finding identity beyond warfare. About the Bajoran girl who'd simply said thank you for saving her father. I want the procedure, the operator said. But not to return to what I was. To become something new. A Tenno who understands both war and peace. Who can fight when necessary but chooses cooperation when possible. Who maintains balance not through isolation but through connection. Dax smiled. A Tenno who learned from the Federation. A Tenno who learned that balance requires more than force. The operator corrected. That true strength comes from knowing when to be a weapon and when to be a person. That protecting people means understanding what makes their lives worth protecting. Tavrel raised an eyebrow, the Vulcan equivalent of enthusiastic approval. Logical. When should we proceed? Soon. But first the operator stood. I have something I need to do. That evening, the operator stood in the orbiter's arsenal, looking at the warframes that had defined their existence. Excalibur. Ash. Loki, each a tool designed for specific purposes, each beautiful in its lethal functionality. Ortis. When transference is restored, I'll use these frames differently. Not just for combat. For protection. For building. For whatever serves genuine balance rather than just preventing domination. Ortis. Approves wholeheartedly, agrees. The Lotus wanted the Tenno to protect, violently eliminate. But perhaps protection means more different things than she understood. Ortis is proud, emotionally compromised of operator's growth. The operator smiled, placing a hand on Excalibur's dormant frame. We're going to show this galaxy what Tenno can be when they have something worth fighting for beyond just survival. When they understand that balance requires both strength and compassion. When they choose connection over isolation. The next day, Commander Tavrel performed the procedure. The Prophets, contacted through the wormhole by Captain Sisko, provided their strange blessing, perceiving the operator across all timelines simultaneously. seeing both the weapon they'd been and the person they were becoming. When the procedure completed and the operator's consciousness successfully transferred into Excalibur for the first time in 2 months, something was different. The connection felt stronger, more stable, anchored not just in void energy but in understanding of why that power existed. Not to dominate, not merely to survive, but to protect those who'd shown them there were other ways to live. The Warframe stood in the Orbiter's arsenal, powered by consciousness that had learned to be both warrior and person, both weapon and protector, both isolated strength and connected purpose. Captain Sisko's voice came through the communication channel. "Wraith, how do you feel?" The operator considered the question, really considered it, perhaps for the first time. How did they feel? Not just tactically, not just physically, but emotionally. "Different," the operator said finally. "Better. Like I'm finally becoming what the Lotus prepared us for without knowing it herself. Not just a weapon pointed at problems, but a guardian who chooses what to protect and why." "Then welcome back, Tenno. Your Warframes missed you. But more importantly," Sisko's voice carried warmth, "your friends did too." Friends. The word resonated in ways the operator was still learning to understand. The Tenno had allies, contacts, mission parameters. But friends? That was something new. Something worth learning, something worth protecting. In the weeks that followed, the operator continued their dual existence. Student by day, learning about Federation history and xenobiology and poetry. Tenno when needed, working with Starfleet to strengthen dimensional barriers, training security forces in Corpus tactics, occasionally deploying to handle threats that required precision over firepower. But always returning. Always choosing to be part of DS9's community rather than remaining isolated aboard the Orbiter. Always learning that balance, true balance, required knowing when to be a weapon and when to be a person. When to fight and when to build. When to stand apart and when to step forward. The Origin System's conflict still existed somewhere across dimensional barriers. The Lotus's fate remained unknown. The full extent of the dimensional instability was yet to be determined. But for now, standing on Deep Space Nine's promenade, watching life happen without fear of immediate violence, the operator Wraith, student, Tenno, guardian, friend understood something profound. You could be forged as a weapon and still choose to become something more. Could carry trauma and still build toward healing. Could maintain balance not through isolation but through connection. The Tenno had come to the Alpha Quadrant, seeking a way home. Instead, they discovered that home wasn't a location. It was the choice to be present. To care. To protect not from duty but from genuine desire to preserve what made life worth living. Balance, after all, wasn't just about preventing domination. It was about creating the conditions where all beings, Tenno included, could discover who they were beyond their weapons. And that discovery, that journey, that choice, that was worth fighting for. The dimensional barriers between universes held, strengthened by technology derived from both Corpus devices and Federation innovation. The Tenno called Wraith remained on Deep Space Nine, becoming something unprecedented. A warrior who chose when to deploy their weapons and when to holster them in favor of different tools. Education, cooperation, understanding. When other Corpus incursions occurred, and they did, occasionally Wraith responded with warframes and tactics honed across lifetimes of conflict. But they also returned to Keiko's classroom, to Jake's writing workshop, to conversations with friends who saw them as person first and weapon second. The Origin System's fate remained uncertain. Perhaps one day, dimensional barriers would stabilize enough for return. Perhaps the Lotus would re-establish contact. Perhaps the Tenno would be called back to resume their endless war. But until that day, Wraith had discovered what the Lotus never taught. That maintaining balance didn't require staying separate from what you protected. That strength came not from isolation but from choosing connection despite its risks. That a weapon could become a guardian could become a student, and a student could become someone who understood that true peace wasn't the absence of conflict, it was the wisdom to know when conflict served protection rather than domination. The Alpha Quadrant had changed Wraith, but Wraith had also changed the Alpha Quadrant, proving that beings forged in war could still choose peace, that child soldiers could heal, that weapons could remember how to be human. And in the end, that was the most profound balance of all. Not preventing others from dominating, but preventing yourself from becoming only what trauma and violence had made you. The Tenno's mission continued. But for the first time, it was a mission chosen rather than assigned. A purpose discovered rather than imposed. A balance maintained not through force alone, but through the harder, braver choice of connection. Live long and prosper, the Federation said. The Tenno had finally learned what those words truly meant.